Chapter 974. Second Brother. Long Zhao's expression was blank, and his face was filled with astonishment. Originally, he thought that with Shi Geng's strength, even if he couldn't defeat this young genius, he wouldn't die so easily. However, he really didn't expect Ling Xiao to be so strong. With a single kick, he actually stomped his second brother, who had always been known for his physical body, into a pile of mud. Long Xiao roared angrily, and his eyes suddenly flickered with vicissitudes of life. He was originally an abandoned son of the demon clan, and his nature was cold. However, the demon clan couldn't tolerate him. He accidentally met these three young men of the human clan, and was moved by their true feelings and became brothers. According to age, Long Xiao was already more than 1,000 years old, so he was naturally treated as their big brother. However, what really moved Long Xiao was that when Jiying obtained the mark of samsara by chance, it was too forced to say that they gave it to the latter. To be precise, it was the mark of samsara that chose Jiying. However, Jiying didn't monopolize such a great fortune. Instead, he shared the Emperor Dao Dragon scripture with everyone, especially Long Xiao, who originally possessed the bloodline of the Dragon clan. Cultivating this scripture was like a fish in water. In just a few years, he had already gotten rid of his impure bloodline and achieved the true Dragon clan's saint might. Of course, in this mortal world, the so-called Dragon clan's saint might was just a comparison. How could a real true dragon of the 9 heavens be trapped in such a desolate region? A half-step saint demon dragon? Ling Zhao's eyes were cold. He lowered his head to look at Long Xiao, who was clenching his fists with a cold expression. He said calmly, "I lack a beast to pull my carriage. Are you willing to submit?" "You." Long Xiao gritted his teeth fiercely while raging flames suddenly surged in his eyes. After that, under the flabbergasted gazes of all the experts of the immortal dynasty, he transformed into his true form and bit furiously at Ling Xiao. At this moment, everyone felt that Long Zhao's body clearly contained a trace of the Dragon clan's domineering aura. Such a bloodline could be considered pure and terrifying. However, at this moment, Ling Zhao's face flashed with a hint of playfulness. The bloodline of the dragon race. In this 9 heavens and 10 earths, other than those living ancestral dragons, who could be more pure and domineering than the dragon soul that had fused with his body. Ling Xiao took a deep breath, his eyes already gloomy. "Evil creature, since you are unwilling to submit, I will erase your consciousness and make you a slave for all eternity." As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Xiao took a step forward, and the shadow of a dragon seemed to be standing behind him. However, this dragon shadow seemed to be obscured by immortal clouds. Only layers of scales that flickered with golden radiance could be seen, as well as a vast and divine aura of the heavens and earth. At this moment, the order of the heavens and the earth froze. Even time seemed to have frozen, and it was impossible to move forward in the slightest. Long Zhao's mouth was agape as the raging flames around him were completely extinguished. His pair of eyes that were the size of a human head clearly flickered with a wisp of indescribable fear. Compared to the people of the Celestial Dynasty, Long Zhao's feelings were undoubtedly more vivid. He actually felt an absolute suppression from this black-clothed youth that came from his bloodline. It was as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, and it was impossible for him to have the slightest intention to resist. One had to know that this kind of suppression was something that even the mighty figures of the dragon race he had seen in the extreme south had never given him. However, a human youth had actually completely suppressed him in terms of bloodline. Of course, even the people of the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty didn't have such a strong feeling right now. However, they all had a trace of demonic veins in their bodies, so they were also extremely fearful of this kind of heavens and earth saint aura. At this moment, Ling Zhao's figure stood tall in the clouds, his black robes fluttering in the wind. However, his eyes seemed to be blooming with golden radiance, and the divine rune between his brows evolved into endless strange phenomena. The heavens and earth seemed to have submitted to his feet at this moment. Boom! Then, he reached out his hand, and it turned into 1,000 feet in size. He grabbed Long Xiao and pulled him in front of him. No, don't. I will submit. At this moment, Long Xiao had already forgotten the obsession in his heart in the face of absolute fear. Especially the unquestionable divine will of the dragon race in Ling Xiao's eyes, it made him tremble from the bottom of his heart. You will only have one chance. Ling Xiao's tone was indifferent. The divine radiance between his brows suddenly shone brightly, and there seemed to be a faint image of a divine talisman appearing, crushing Long Xiao's soul sea. The dignified half-saint of the demon race had been completely reduced to an animal. He no longer had any intelligence, only a simple soul consciousness. Gu Chaoxi is my fiancé, Ling Xiao's fiancé. The crown prince of the Saint Spirit Celestial dynasty coveted her appearance. The imperial emperor used the power of the Saint Spirit Celestial dynasty to coerce her into a marriage. He deserves to die. Ling Xiao stood in the void, like a god who judged the life and death of living beings. Hearing his words, the face of the Saint Spirit Celestial Emperor in the crowd turned pale, and he almost collapsed to the ground. No, it's not like that. Young master, please investigate carefully. This has nothing to do with the Saint Spirit Celestial dynasty. It's all because of the Gu clan's third ancestor. From today onwards, if anyone in the entire Azure Sky realm dares to hurt her, think about her, or provoke her, they will be killed without mercy. Their 10 clans will be slaughtered. If the heavens do not forgive them, they will be killed together with the immortals and demons. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Lightning, flames, divine wood, and other divine elephants rose and fell outside his body. The wind blew for 30,000 miles, and the sun was high in the sky. As far as the eye could see, there seemed to be darkness at the end of the sky like a tide. 3,000 phantoms of immortals, demons, Buddhists, and demons appeared alternately. They either knelt down devoutly or recited sutras. The power of heaven and earth could not compare to the power of a single thought from the youth. Then, he only glanced at the Saint Spirit Celestial Emperor indifferently before stepping on Long Xiao's head and flying into the distance. Behind him, the Saint Spirit Celestial Emperor's face was pale, but his eyes suddenly flashed with extreme resentment. However, just as he took a step forward and was about to rush towards the black-robed youth, another sigh sounded in the world. The ferocious expression on the Saint Spirit Celestial Emperor's face suddenly froze. He raised his head in a daze and looked at the figure in the imperial robe standing in the clouds. His eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life. Ha 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 ha! Ha ha ha! At this moment, Ling Xiao's figure had already disappeared at the end of the sky. Since the Ji clan's patriarch had already awakened and did not appear, he had already made a decision. Today, Ling Xiao did not massacre the Celestial dynasty not because he was benevolent, but because he had other plans. That Qin Chen would appear sooner or later. He would definitely come to the Saint Spirit Celestial dynasty to inquire about the news. And with the fear that the people of the Celestial dynasty had towards the Ling people, they would most likely give him a surprise when the time came. In the eyes of the people of the Celestial dynasty, he had already been benevolent. There was no need for Ling Xiao to do anything. The Ji clan's patriarchs would take the initiative to clean up the Celestial dynasty and kill all the extras related to Jiying. At the end of the day, whether it was Gu Chaoxi or Nian Qingyun, they were all set by the heavens and had righteous hearts. Even if they had a cold personality, they were not evil people. If Ling Xiao really massacred thousands of living beings in the Celestial dynasty today, it was inevitable that he would be suspected by the people of the Celestial dynasty. This would be an obstacle to his next plan. To kill, one had to kill for the greatest value. Only then could it be called an art. Everyone was just a chess piece. Even if they were alive, it was just that the heat had not been used up yet. Once Jiying died, who in the azure sky world would still dare to think about Gu Chao Ci? As for whether the Celestial Dynasty's Empress would be touched, Ling Xiao guessed that she would most likely be. From the moment he saw the ancient azure sky sword in her hand, everything was already decided. Moreover, for some unknown reason, ever since he saw Gu Chao Ci, Ling Xiao had an inexplicable feeling from her. From the looks of it, this Empress was also hiding many secrets from him. However, do you think that I did all this just to make her feel touched? Childish. Chapter 975. Stacked Shadow. Outside the Saint Spirit region, on top of a barren mountain, Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back as he looked into the distance. Behind him, Yi Qingchan stood respectfully with a clear gaze. Stacked Shadow's figure slowly appeared in the air and bowed towards Ling Xiao. Master! Is there any news about Ling Tian and Qin Qingshan? Counting the time, Ling Xiao had been in the upper world for 10 days, and all the heavenly wills had returned. What he needed to do next was to completely create a chaotic world, a turbulent era where all the forces would be involved. Only then would he be able to rightfully reap the heavenly wills and set up a trap for the world. Young Master Ling Tian has already entered the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb and was personally accepted as a disciple by the Sword Master. As for Qin Qingshan, Master, he seems to have joined an evil sect. Stacked Shadow's expression turned serious, and there seemed to be a demonic glow in his eyes. Evil sect? That's right. It is said that this sect was only known to people in the past 200 years, and it is full of evil cultivators. However, their cultivation is not high, so they were not taken seriously by the other forces. However, Stacked Shadow suddenly laughed bitterly. It is said that this evil sect was extremely excited about the appearance of the Sky Demon recently. Their sect master even announced that the person who massacred Ocean View City was his disciple. This sect master is a good person. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. With Qin Qingshan's providence, it was impossible for him to join an evil sect for no reason. According to Ling Xiao's thoughts, this sect definitely had a fortune that belonged to him. As for Ling Tian, the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb was the holy land of the Azure Sky Sword Dao. It was said that an ancient sword immortal was buried in this ancient tomb. Although the current sword tomb master was born slightly later, he stood proudly at the peak of the Azure Sky Sword Tomb. Even the Daotian Academy and the Xianhong Immortal Sect, which had a long history, did not dare to provoke him easily. It was said that this sect did not have many disciples, but each of them was monstrous. With Ling Tian's Sword Dao, it was natural for him to join the Sword Tomb. However, if he wanted to become the only successor of the Sword Tomb, it would depend on the efforts of his brother, Ling Xiao. In the younger generation of Azure Firmament, there were 10 great sequences and 100 great monsters. Ling Xiao had already met 2 of the sequences, Xue Xian and Gu Chao Ci. Secondly, the Prince of the Holy Spirit, Jiying, and Wenren Zhiga of the Daotian Academy were only among the top 100 monstrous talent. In the Sword Catacomb, it was said that there was a person in the sequence called Xiang Tian, who was known as the Sword Maniac of this generation. The name of the Sword Master was passed down from generation to generation. Only by obtaining the title of Sword Master would one have the power to control the Dragon Abyss. If it wasn't for Ling Tian's appearance, the Sword Master's inheritance would definitely fall into Xiang Tian's hands. But now Ling Xiao's eyes flashed with a sinister light. Double Shadow, help me find a person called Qin. Qin? Double Shadow nodded slightly and disappeared on the spot. Ever since Ling Xiao saw this young man in Jiying's Soul Sea today, he had a feeling that this person was most likely a son of destiny. After going through hardships and dangers, there were no accident. Even if he was covered in blood, it was only the path of cultivation. It was perfectly normal for the sons of heaven to become sworn brothers. However, today Ling Xiao killed 4 of his siblings. Among them, Ji Hanyu was Qin Chen's love. Once he found out about this, it would probably be a never-ending journey of revenge. Therefore, the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty was the first trap that Ling Xiao set for him. If he was really lucky, he wouldn't die in the hands of the Ji clan so easily. As for the Stacked Shadows secret investigation, it was a surefire guarantee. Even if he wanted to take revenge, he was just a treasure-hunting beast with emotions that could be controlled by others. However, that evil sect could be used to point out the whereabouts of the Sky Demon for the Azure Firmament sect. With a thought, Ling Xiao disappeared on the spot and appeared in the realm. In the past 10 days, he had killed 2 sons of destiny and obtained their fate. Now that Gu Chao Ci hadn't let go of the grudge in her heart, he would give her some time to think it through. System: convert fate points to forging fate point. Beep. Congratulations to the host for forging fate points by 4%, a total of 50%. Beep. Congratulations to the host for forging fate body to 50%. Unlocking a new system function. You can directly kill Sons of Destiny with less than 10,000 fate points and plunder their fate points. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed and a smile appeared on his face. As expected, as his body of destiny was forged, the restriction on killing Sons of Destiny would gradually disappear. This way, he wouldn't have to waste time to plunder their fate points. System: add a point to the Xiantian ancient scripture. Thousands of rays of light appeared in the sky. 2 Dao bodies appeared one by one beside Ling Xiao. They were both full of spirituality and mysterious. At the same time, in the southernmost region, a beautiful woman in green stood before a palace with her hands behind her back. She was looking to the north. Although there were some traces of time on that picturesque face, it was still difficult to conceal her peerless beauty. Qing Fei, the demon lord is calling for you. Behind her, 2 maids in pink walked over. They were both full of demonic energy. I know. Hearing this, the beautiful woman in green nodded and sighed in her heart. She didn't know why, but her mood was inexplicably irritable today, and there was a faint sense of uneasiness. Inside the palace of the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty, the 3rd forefather of the Gu clan was sitting on a golden chair with a frown. Yesterday, he lost all his face at the city of Wu. Not only did he lose his reputation, but he also pissed all over the floor and offended the young master of the Ling people. Luckily, Gu Chao Ci didn't know what was good for her and angered the descendant of the Ling people. Because of that, he managed to save his life. But now it would be hard to explain to the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty. After all, as long as the Holy Spirit Celestial Emperor had a brain, he wouldn't dare to ask Ji Ying to take away a woman that the young master of the Ling people wanted. Gu Chao Ci, look at what you've done. Since when did you get involved with the young master of the Ling people? I think you're just trying to destroy my Gu clan. The 3rd forefather of the Gu clan shouted angrily. His old eyes were full of anger. Of the 4 forefathers of the Gu clan, 3 of them had been in seclusion for a long time. He was the true ruler of the Gu clan. But Gu Hongtian's bloodline was the emperor bloodline of the Gu clan. He couldn't be too hasty if he wanted to take over this position. Originally, as long as Gu Chao Ci married Ji Ying, this bloodline would be completely lost. But the young master of the Ling people suddenly appeared and said that he had a marriage agreement with Gu Chao Ci. Wasn't this bullshit? This descendant of the Ling people looked to be in his early 20s. But the forefathers of the Gu clan had been dead for hundreds of years. How did he set a marriage agreement with Gu Chao Ci? Of course, even if they knew that Ling Xiao was bragging, no one in the Gu clan was dissatisfied. If Gu Chao Ci really married the young master of the Ling people, the crisis of the Gu clan would be resolved. But Gu Chao Ci's stubbornness not only ruined the future of the Gu clan, but also put the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty in a difficult position. If the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty really broke off this marriage agreement, the Gu clan would be destroyed in the Thousand Dynasty conquest sooner or later. Therefore, the third forefather of the Gu clan had sent his son to the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty last night to test their intentions. Looking at the time, he should be back today. Gu Chaoxiai, Gu Hongtian, you and your father are stubborn and self-opinionated. Now, as the third forefather of the Gu clan, I am taking away your emperor bloodline's inheritance. Men, take these two bastards to the heavenly prison and wait for their punishment. Hearing this, Gu Chaoxiai's face didn't change at all. But Gu Hongtian closed his eyes in despair and didn't speak for a long time. Report. Chapter 976. Outside the Immortal Phoenix Palace, a hurried and shrill cry of alarm suddenly rang out, instantly interrupting the words of the Gu clan's three ancestors. Those who could stand in the palace were all reputable figures in the Gu clan. Who was it that didn't know life from death and dared to shout and wrangle in the imperial palace? Ancestor! Ancestor! At this moment, a figure suddenly stumbled in from outside the hall and knelt down in front of everyone. Ancestor! Bad news. Gu Ping? Didn't I ask you to go to the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty with Qitian? Suddenly, the third ancestor's expression changed as he thought of something. Where is Qitian? Where is Qitian? Gu Qitian was the grandson of the third ancestor of the Gu clan. He was also the person he was going to recommend for the throne. He was a 6th grade saint and was the most talented person in Gu Hongtian's generation. However, the emperor bloodline of the Gu clan was in Gu Hongtian's hands. No matter how talented Gu Qitian was, he could only assist him. He could not accept this. Ancestor. When Lord Qitian and I arrived at the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty, we were stopped by the Ji clan's ancestor. Then, Gu Ping's face was full of fear. Then what? Tell us. Then, the Ji clan's ancestor struck and smashed Lord Qitian into pieces. What? Hearing that, the faces of the Gu clan's powerhouses changed. They looked at the third ancestor with fear. That was right. The Gu clan and the Immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty had declined. However, the Ji clan's ancestor killed a saint of the Gu clan. Wasn't that too arrogant? It must be because of you. It's all your fault for being involved with the young master of the Ling people. You made the Ji clan's ancestor think that I deliberately set the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty up. The third ancestor of the Gu clan suddenly turned around and looked at Gu Chaoxiai. The murderous intent in his eyes could no longer be concealed. With his strength as a 5th grade earthly sovereign, it was impossible for him to avenge Gu Qitian. Even if the other 3 ancestors of the Gu clan appeared, how would they dare to go against the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty? Moreover, although this matter was not his fault, with Ling Xiao interfering like this, it would definitely cause the entire Ji clan to feel uneasy. Killing Gu Qitian and cutting off all ties with the Gu clan, this Ji clan elder sure had a good plan. Ling Xiao didn't dare to offend him, even if he had to die. But Gu Chaoxiai, now that you've lost your backing and left in disappointment because of young Master Ling, no one should object to me killing you, right? Of course, under normal circumstances, with the Gu clan's 3 ancestors' temperament, they wouldn't dare to do something so absolute. However, at this moment, the inheritances of his 3 lineages had also been broken. Thus, there was nothing for him to worry about. Third ancestor. What do you mean by that? Chaoxiai clearly. Gu Hongtian stood in front of Gu Chaoxiai and clenched his fist. There was a tinge of hatred between his brows. With the death of the clan's old ancestor, Gu Hongtian was no longer the Gu clan head of the past. In front of these patriarchs and supremes, he was just a puppet without any power. Originally, Gu Hongtian had indeed wanted to use Gu Chaoxiai's marriage as a bargaining chip for the continuation of his lineage. But from the looks of it now, it was hopeless. Or rather, from the beginning, He had underestimated the greed and ambition of these clan members. The path of immortality was vast and the weak were prey to the strong. Even within the same clan, there was always scheming against each other, and the strong were respected. This was the true grand scene of the path of immortality. Without strength and foundation, how could there be stability? The human heart was greedy by nature. "Shut up!" The Gu clan's third ancestor shouted angrily. His supreme being aura surged. Then, he waved his hand and slapped Gu Hongtian to the ground. Poof! Gu Hongtian's cultivation was only at the Saint realm. The only reason he was still alive was because the Gu clan's third ancestor didn't kill him. Even so, a casual blow from a supreme being still caused half of Gu Hongtian's face to collapse and distort. It was extremely terrifying. His figure fell into the hall and crashed into a stone pillar before falling to the ground. "Father!" Even with Gu Chaoxiai's temperament, she couldn't help but frown and cry out in shock. But, just as the Gu clan's third ancestor was about to walk toward Gu Chaoxiai, Gu Hongtian struggled to get up from the ground and walked back to Gu Chaoxiai with determination in his eyes. He couldn't protect the Gu clan. He couldn't protect the Emperor bloodline either. He didn't want his daughter to suffer any more humiliation. Perhaps Gu Hongtian felt guilty in his heart at this moment. If he hadn't pushed Gu Chaoxiai to the Emperor's position out of selfishness, she would be ruling the world and sharpening her Tao heart now. She wouldn't have taken the risk and split her 9 souls to train, only to end up in failure and even lose her cultivation. Ancestor, this has nothing to do with the resignation. Moreover, if you really dare to hurt her, aren't you afraid that the young master of Ling people will blame you? Gu Hongtian sighed softly. His eyes were full of sorrow. He didn't expect that the Gu clan's clan leader would use such a method to protect his daughter. He used the remaining power of the young master of another clan to intimidate the ancestor of his own clan. This was ridiculous. "Father." Gu Chaoxiai's eyes were clear and cold. However, she was also inexplicably touched at this moment. In the past, she worked hard to cultivate in order to protect the celestial dynasty. Now, she only wanted to protect the child in her body. Although she severed her own great Tao and used the Chaos Tao law to conceal and nurture the child, his sky demon bloodline would still be exposed and would not be tolerated by the world. From the beginning, Gu Chaoxiai knew that the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty couldn't protect him. Now, her Tao law had dissipated and her cultivation had fallen. She wanted to protect him, but she was powerless. Suddenly she, who had always been proud, felt a trace of regret. If she hadn't been so stubborn that day, would the ending have been different? "Ling Xiao, where are you?" "Gu Hongtian, don't scare me." Gu Chaoxiai is spoiled and willful. She offended Master Ling Xiao. If I don't kill her today, can you bear the responsibility of Ling people's blame in the future? The Gu clan's third forefather snorted. He took a step forward and was about to press his palm down again. At this moment, Gu Ping, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly raised his head and swallowed hard. "Third forefather!" The Gu clan's third forefather's eyes trembled. He was obviously shocked by Gu Ping's sudden roar. "You are courting death. Third forefather, please think thrice before you act." "What a good think thrice before you act. I, Gu Yanqing, have never regretted anything in my life." Gu Chaoxiai disregarded the clan's rules and offended a strong enemy. In the name of the Gu clan's third forefather, Jiang is dead. The Divine Spirit Emperor is also dead. Before the Gu clan's third forefather could finish speaking, Gu Ping suddenly cried out in grief and knelt on the ground again. From the moment he found out about this, he already knew that the Gu clan's 3 bloodlines were finished. Not only the Gu clan's third forefather, but everyone, including servants like him, would probably die. What? Hearing this, the entire immortal Phoenix Imperial Palace suddenly fell into a stifling atmosphere. Even Gu Chaoxiai had a strange expression on her face. It seemed like she was anticipating something, but also panicking. Although she no longer dared to have any hope, there was still an indescribable joy in her heart. Who did this? Gu Yanqing swallowed hard. The imposing aura on his body had completely disappeared. Only shock remained in his eyes. Ling people's young master, Ling Xiao. Chapter 977. What? How could it be? Gu Yanqing's body trembled, and he almost lost his balance. The hatred in his heart had long turned into endless fear. He stared blankly at Gu Chaoxiai and her father. His mouth trembled, but he did not dare to say anything. It's over. Master Ling Xiao Gu Hongtian's expression was also a little stunned. He turned his head and looked at Gu Chaoxiai in confusion. At this moment, the girl seemed to be smiling faintly, but there was not much emotion in her eyes. It turned out that when he left in a fit of anger, he had gone to the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty. However, his actions were truly that of a demon, cruel and overbearing. Son, you mustn't be like him, it's so annoying. Boom! Just as the atmosphere in the hall was getting more and more stifling, and all the members of the Gu clan had complicated expressions on their faces, above the void, a majestic aura suddenly descended. Instantly, the sky darkened, and it was as if there was a demonic light covering the mountains and rivers. A terrifying aura of a supreme being instantly enveloped the entire immortal Phoenix ancient city, and for some reason, it made people feel like they were about to die. Who is it? Gu Yanqing staggered and fell to the ground. At this moment, his Tao heart had already been shaken by the words, Ling people. Even the slightest movement seemed to be a premonition of his death. Where is the young master of my clan? Suddenly, a graceful figure in black walked out from the layers of clouds. There was an unconcealable murderous intent in her deep, beautiful eyes. It was the 9th ancestor of the Ling people, the Feather King Mystifying Butterfly, who had chased after Ling Xiao all the way here but suddenly lost track of Ling Xiao. Sky Supreme, the cultivators of the Gu clan walked out of the main hall and looked up at the figure that towered over the world in shock. Senior, Master Ling Xiao is not in the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty. Gu Hongtian stepped forward and stood in front of everyone. The dejected look on his face had long disappeared, and in its place was the calmness of the Gu clan's leader. It was obvious that the Sky Supreme in front of them was the first ancestor of the Ling people. If it was in the past, Gu Hongtian would definitely be terrified. However, after learning that Ling Xiao had killed Jiying, he already had his suspicions. Perhaps this young master of the Ling people was truly fond of Zhao Xi. Not in immortal Phoenix. Bewildering Butterfly's beautiful eyes were cold and indifferent. Her sovereign soul consciousness covered thousands of miles, and finally, her gaze landed on the red-clothed figure. Her celestial appearance was picturesque, and her temperament was ethereal. This Gu Chaoxiai was indeed worthy of being called the #1 beauty in the Azure continent. Her unparalleled beauty was indeed worthy of his lord. However, his background was too low and he was too arrogant. Since His Highness can't bear to do it, I'll crush this woman who doesn't know what's good for her. On the way here, Bewitching Butterfly had already found out about what had happened in the Divine Martial Emperor City. Ling Xiao had fought 3 saints all by himself, triggering his old injuries and leaving in disappointment. The Gu clan could not be forgiven. Even the Emperor God Martial Emperor deserved to die. However, what really worried Bewildering Butterfly was that Ling Xiao had suddenly disappeared after leaving the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty. In the entire Azure continent, although no one dared to attack the Ling people, Ling Xiao was extremely talented. She was afraid that someone would have evil thoughts and secretly attack him. Buzz! At this thought, Bewildering Butterfly's murderous intent intensified. Then, she directly stretched out her hand and pressed down on Gu Chaoci. Boom! Heaven and earth were turned upside down, and layers of spatial cracks extended for thousands of miles. The rolling divine power turned into a long river that fell from the sky, wanting to crush the entire immortal Phoenix Imperial Palace. Buzz! At this moment, in the depths of the immortal Phoenix Imperial Palace, 3 ancient and terrifying auras suddenly awakened and rushed into the sky, wanting to stop the descending divine power. However, although these 3 auras were at the first stage of the Supreme Realm, and one of them had even entered the heavenly Supreme Realm, the moment they came into contact with the long river, they were still instantly shattered. 3 cries of blood immediately sounded. At this moment, the entire Gu clan, regardless of whether they were old or young, strong or weak, turned pale. There was only despair in their eyes. Gu Chaoci raised her head and looked at the angry and beautiful figure. Her eyes trembled slightly, as if she was sad. In just 3 short years, the young man in her eyes seemed to be standing at a height that she could only dream of. Even one of the patriarchs in her clan had the power to destroy the entire immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty. This was fate. Since the beginning, the beauty of this world was not with her. She lost her mother when she was young and had no one to rely on. She went to the imperial court and experienced all kinds of schemes. It was not easy for her to comprehend the chaos and awaken the spirit of chaos. However, the patriarch died, and the immortal dynasty was in turmoil. Today, she was suppressed by someone and her life was hanging by a thread. Gu Chaoci's jade-like hand gently stroked her lower abdomen. Her beautiful eyes suddenly flashed with determination. Patriarch I buzz. The moment the supreme river poured down, an ear-piercing buzz suddenly sounded in front of Gu Chaoci. A black-robed figure walked out of the void and stood in front of her. His back was facing the sky, and there was a warm smile on his immortal-like handsome face. Boom! The 10,000 feet long river suddenly froze, and it was difficult to advance any further. Qingyun, I'm here. A familiar voice sounded in her ears. Even at this critical moment it was so familiar that it was a mess. Countless images suddenly flashed in Gu Chaoci's eyes. On the peak of Dao Comprehension Mountain, his white clothes were stained with blood, but his smile was bright. In the ancient mystic realm, he descended from the sky and blocked all the wind and frost. Originally, Gu Chaoci was rational. Even with the influence of Nian Qingyun's soul, she did not think that she would really fall in love with this demon from a desolate place in the lower realm. But at this moment she realized that she was wrong. It was not that she did not want to marry Jiying, but that her heart could not hold anyone else. Tears rose in her eyes, but they were quickly suppressed by Gu Chaoci. He was the sky demon, and the 9 heavens feared him. She was not afraid of death, but she could not let her child suffer the slightest bit of harm. Oh! Gu Chaoci took a deep breath, and her beautiful face regained its calm. Patriarch Bewitching Butterfly. Seeing this, Ling Xiao was not surprised at all. He naturally understood Gu Chaoci's personality very well, and he always felt that this woman had some scruples in her heart. But that should not be. Ling People's young master was the only one in the world, and Ling Xiao was not a good-for-nothing. She clearly had feelings in her heart, so what was she worried about? Young master. Bewitching Butterfly's beautiful eyes trembled, and there seemed to be a hint of gloominess in the depths of her eyes. She was just a breath away from crushing this arrogant woman to death in her hands. She did not dare to disobey Ling Xiao in the slightest. However, in the upper realm, whether it was killing the Leaf Lord, controlling the Foliaceae, or carefully plotting in front of the snow-tide rock, everything could be said to be perfect. This kind of scheming was completely different from the sky demon hundreds of thousands of years ago. But, in divine martial Emperor City and the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty, Ling Zhao's actions were based on his temperament. What did this mean? The sky demon was supposed to be the ruler of the 9 heavens. How could he show any flaws? So, from the moment she came to the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty, she actually only had one goal, and that was to kill Gu Chaoci. Chapter 978. Gu Chaoci is my woman. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the mystic butterfly above him. Although his expression was calm, his domineering tone caused the expressions of the Gu clan's powerhouses to change. Especially Gu Yanqing, whose legs trembled and his long robe was drenched. It's the mystic butterfly's fault. I'm just worried about young master's safety. Moreover, what was even more shocking was that after hearing Ling Zhao's reprimand, the Ling people's patriarch, who had already stepped into the heavenly sovereign level, nodded respectfully without any complaints. His tone was as if he was facing a real emperor. He was the only one who was ridiculous. The Ling people have never bullied others. Patriarch Mystic Butterfly, I hope you will remember this. Ling Xiao said indifferently. He was handsome, and there was a faint divine glow around him. It was dazzling and fascinating. How could he not know what the Mystic Butterfly was thinking? However, Gu Chaoci had tens of thousands of providence points in her body, and her body was unwell. It was hard to imagine how peerless she would be when she completely untangled the knot in her heart. Greetings to Master Ling Xiao. Greetings to the Ling people's patriarch. Deep in the Gu Palace, 3 ancient figures stepped down from the sky and bowed to Ling Xiao and the Mystic Butterfly. At that moment, the 3 of them were a little weak. It was obvious that they had suffered serious injuries from the Mystic Butterfly's rage. At that moment, Gu Chaoci only looked at the young man in front of her coldly and did not say anything. Domineering and cold, such a person did not deserve to be loved. Yet, everything he did was for her sake. The Taigu Ling people had a deep foundation and were extremely powerful. However, Ling Xiao had just been born, and he did not hesitate to offend the Xinwu dynasty, the Holy Spirit Celestial dynasty, and even the Gu clan. It was just to tell the Azure world that Gu Chaoci was his woman. To be honest, this kind of domineering behavior was extremely childish in Gu Chaoci's eyes. But for some reason, it gave people an indescribable sense of security. With Gu Chaoci's beauty, talent, and background, there were countless suitors in the Azure world. Most of them were the young masters of supreme powers. But no matter who it was, no one was as direct and domineering as Ling Xiao. He didn't even ask her if she was willing to be his woman. What about the marriage contract? Ling Xiao raised his foot and walked in front of the Gu clan's 3rd forefather, who was lying limp on the ground. Engagement. Gu Yanqing trembled and hurriedly got up from the ground. He respectfully handed a marriage contract to Ling Xiao with both hands. At this moment, he still had a glimmer of hope that the young master of the Ling people would spare his lowly life on account of Gu Chaoci. The immortal dynasty's throne and the Gu clan's imperial bloodline were nothing in his eyes. Being alive was the greatest fortune on the path to immortality. Gu Chaoci and I already had a marriage contract. As the 3rd forefather of the Gu clan, you dare to force my fiancé to marry someone else. Do you know your crime? Ling Xiao held the golden paper in his hand and crumpled it into a ball. Then, he lifted Gu Yanqing's chin and stuffed it into his mouth. Plop! Hearing this, Gu Yanqing staggered and knelt on the ground. He looked at the Gu clan's remaining 3 forefathers in despair. But at this moment, the 3 of them were not looking at him. Their faces were calm. The Taigu Ling people were a supreme power above the Xinwu dynasty. With the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty's resources, to put it bluntly, the bewildering butterfly forefather could easily uproot the Gu clan. Young master, I really didn't know. Please don't be angry. Didn't know? Ling Xiao nodded slowly. He turned around and looked at Gu Chaoci. If everything can be avoided by saying that you didn't know, then what is the use of the rules in this world? The Ling people have never bullied others. But you have crossed my bottom line. Bewildering butterfly forefather, kill as a warning to others. Yes. Bewildering butterfly's eyes were cold. Suddenly, supreme divine power surged around his body. Out of nowhere, he slammed his palm down. Vast heavens and earth came crashing down. The Gu clan's third forefather did not even have time to beg for mercy before he was smashed into a pile of mush by the black palm. The entire square was dead silent. Everyone stared at the pool of flesh and blood on the ground, and their eyes flickered with intense shock. An Earth Supreme level expert was killed with a single palm strike. This kind of shock was enough to send chills down everyone's spine. Wife, are you satisfied? Ling Zhao's face suddenly bloomed with gentleness. It was completely different from the coldness from before. At this moment, everyone realized that this young master of the Ling people did not seem to be so overbearing and cold-blooded. At the very least, in front of Gu Chaoxiai, he was always gentle and warm. Gu Chaoxiai is not worthy of being the wife of the young master of the Taigu Ling people. Gu Chaoxiai's beautiful face was cold. Her tone was indifferent. To be honest, with her personality, she would never say such words in a fit of pique. But every time she saw him, she felt inexplicably vexed. It was as if she had been tied down by fate for thousands of years. Wife, have you forgotten that we have already done the deed of husband and wife? You! Shut up! Gu Chaoxiai's beautiful eyes trembled. Her ears turned red. The cold indifference on her face disappeared and turned into shyness. Looking at the two people in front of them, the group of Gu clan experts immediately dispersed. Even the mystic butterfly let out a sigh and disappeared into the void. Haha, it seems that my wife still remembers. I thought that you had forgotten. Ling Zhao's smile was gentle, but the evil in his eyes made Gu Chaoxiai's heart tremble. You once said that if we get married, heaven and earth should congratulate us. Now that you are the young master of the Ling people and have a noble status, I'm afraid it will be difficult for heaven and earth to congratulate us. Hearing the depression in Gu Chaoxiai's voice, Ling Zhao's eyes turned cold. What do you mean, my wife? If you want me to marry you, it's not impossible. But you have to wait until the day you stand at the top of the Azure world. Then you wait. Ling Zhao turned around and walked out of the imperial palace. Seeing his determination and carefree attitude, Gu Chaoxiai's lips trembled. In the end, she did not say anything else. At this moment, there were also some complicated emotions in her heart. She was not against Ling Zhao. Even the expectation made her feel a little guilty. She should have accompanied him to conquer the 9 heavens and step onto the imperial road. But now, she could only urge him to move forward in this almost unreasonable way. Now, she had the demonic seed in her body. She had severed her own great Tao and had lost the opportunity to stand at the top of the world. Only Ling Zhao was unparalleled. With the Ling people behind him, he carried the charm of heaven and earth. Only when he reached the imperial realm would her child have a chance of survival. Ling Zhao, you won't abandon me, right? But, just as Ling Zhao's figure was about to disappear, Gu Chaoxiai's eyes finally flashed with a trace of panic. A complicated look of hesitation appeared on her fair face. Ling Zhao. At least now there was hope in her heart. She would not be as depressed as before. So what if he severed his own great Tao? This immortal opportunity was just starting all over again. Thank you. Gu Chaoxiai pursed her red lips tightly. Seeing the black-robed figure stop and walk away, there was an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. From the beginning to the end, Ling Zhao did not turn back. He only raised his hand and waved slightly. There was an inexplicable deep meaning in his eyes. His immortal path was to step into the 9 heavens. How could the azure sky peak be enough? Gu Chaoxiai, you did not disappoint me in the end. Now, in the eyes of all the forces in the azure sky peak, you are already my flaw. Haha, a flaw that is extremely lucky and protected by the heavenly Tao. Only when a person has no flaw can he be called a god. But how could a person not have any flaw? Boom! Above the void, golden light flowed. The young man stepped forward. Below him, there was a dragon's shadow floating in the clouds. It tore through the sky and swept towards the horizon. Chapter 979. Kill the Realm Lord, slaughter the Ling people. Long live the gone sky divine sect. At the center of the Azure continent, in a barren mountain between the Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb and the Shenwu dynasty, figures in black cloaks stood at the top of the mountain, clenching their fists above their heads as they shouted. These people all had a wisp of eerie nether chi on them. Clearly, they were from the evil path. The location of this barren mountain was chosen very cleverly. The Dragon Abyss Sword Tomb had always ignored the secular world. Unless the world was destroyed, the 7 swords would not be used. The Shenwu dynasty was the most vast supreme force. A barren mountain would not attract the attention of the Emperor dynasty. The Sky Demon has appeared. The opportunity for the gone sky divine sect to rise has arrived. Now I have inherited the will of the Sky Demon and descended to the Azure continent. It is to lead you all to conquer the 9 heavens and kill the gods and immortals. At this moment, on the top of the mountain, a tall figure in a blood-red cloak roared angrily. Blood chi lingered around his body, and even his eyes were a strange blood-red color. He was actually a saint stage expert. Sect leader is mighty. We pledge our lives to follow you. Alright. Hand over all the blood spirits you have collected. The blood-robed figure nodded slightly. He waved his hand and a large black cauldron appeared in the air. The black-robed figures stepped forward one by one. They took out various bottles and containers from their heaven-earth bags and poured them into the cauldron. A thick smell of blood filled the air. It was like purgatory on earth. Among the crowd, Chun Qingshan and Dream Demon were also dressed in black robes. After a while, the blood-robed figure put away the cauldron with satisfaction. He waved his hand to dismiss the crowd and walked into the depths of the barren mountain. Holy Infant, the offerings are here. He only bowed and took out the cauldron when he appeared in front of a dark cave in the mountain. There seemed to be a hint of anxiety on his face. Come in. A childish voice suddenly came from the cave. A hint of fear appeared on the blood-robed figure's face. However, he did not dare to disobey, and stepped in with the cauldron. Spiritual light suddenly bloomed in the cave. There seemed to be a formation barrier at the entrance. A thick smell of blood rushed out. It was nauseating. Holy Infant. The blood-robed saint bowed, not daring to raise his head to look at the figure in the cave. At this moment, at the end of the cave, there was a pool of blood rippling with scarlet radiance. At the edge of the blood pool, a thin and small figure stood with his hands behind his back. He was also dressed in a blood-red robe, and he was actually a 4 or 5-year-old child. However, there wasn't a trace of innocence on this child's face. Instead, there was a sinister smile that seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. Ah Gon, how's your cultivation of the King of Hell's art coming along? Holy Infant, I have reached the 3rd level. The blood-robed saint's tone was humble, and there was even a trace of panic. Although the child in front of him had yet to step into the saint realm, but his methods and knowledge had left the blood-robed saint in awe. Indeed, this person was Sect Master Gon Tian from the southern border of the Xingzhou continent. The cultivation method he practiced was taught by the Holy Infant, who then guided him to ascend from the Xingzhou continent to find the true spirit of the abyssal race. When Sect Master Gon Tian ascended to the Azure, he was merely a 9th stage God Emperor. However, in just a few hundred years, he had stepped into the saint realm after being baptized by the blood world again and again. This speed could be said to be terrifying. One had to know that in the entire Azure world, only a few people had entered the saint realm in the past 500 years, and they were all the successors of the various supreme orthodoxies and the longevity ancient clan. However, There was naturally a drawback to increasing one's cultivation so quickly. The Akalanatha king of Hell's art used the dead chi and blood spirit as a guide to transform into the abyssal body and become immortal. Once the blood spirit was insufficient, one would suffer a backlash from the abyssal body, and the pain would be unbearable. Now that the Gon-Tian divine sect's disciples were taught the god art, their cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. However, if they wanted to suppress the backlash, they had to submit to the Holy Infant and be baptized by it. Only then would they be able to escape the pain and see eternal life in the cycle of reincarnation. In other words, the Holy Infant was a true God in the eyes of those who practiced the King of Hell's art. That kind of heart-devouring and bone-rotting pain was not something that living beings with flesh and blood could endure. However, there were always some greedy people in this world. If one didn't have exceptional talent and wanted to reach the peak of the world, they would have to find another way and practice an evil art. That's right. As long as you work for me, sooner or later, you will become a supreme and obtain the King of Hell's true body. The Holy Infant smiled eerily, and blood-red patterns seemed to appear in his eyes. Have you found the Sky Demon's tracks? Not yet, but it's said that a few days ago, the Sky Demon appeared in the Heavenly Wood Foliaceae. After that, it was heavily injured by the young master of the Realm Lord's palace and the young master of the Ling people. Looks like the Sky Demon is no longer as strong as it used to be. This is our chance. The Holy Infant smiled coldly, and there was an indescribable evil and eeriness on his young and pale face. We've been hiding for hundreds of years and have 3,000 disciples. Now that the Sky Demon has appeared and is slaughtering living beings in the name of the Sky Demon, even those longevity ancient clans and supreme orthodoxies will only focus on the Sky Demon. They will never think that we are the real demons. Holy Infant is wise. As long as I complete the 10,000 spirits' blood sacrifice and enter the Saint Realm, I can use the heart mantra of the King of Hell as a guide to find the place where my clan is sealed. At that time, I, the Blood Child, will release the Netherworld race, and the Azure World will completely fall into my clan's hands. You and the 3,000 disciples will be great contributors. The Blood Child's Holy Infant's voice was high-pitched, and it was strange for him to say such domineering words with a child's voice. Holy Infant, if the Sky Demon knows about this, will it? Sect leader Gon-Tian's expression froze, and there was some fear in his heart. The immemorial Sky Demon was feared by the 9 heavens. Although the Holy Infant was powerful and was a member of the Netherworld race, if the Sky Demon came, how could they bear its anger? What are you afraid of? In the immemorial age, our clan was also a great clan. Although we've been sealed by the immortal race, we still have our foundation. The Sky Demon Palace has been destroyed in the River of Time. If the Sky Demon still had the strength of the past, how could he be heavily injured by 2 juniors from the Azure World? If he dares to come, I'll make him submit to me. The Blood Child's Holy Infant snorted, and his domineering aura was unparalleled. Holy Infant's heavenly might. All right, you can go now. Continue to look for people who are fated with the Netherworld race. Also tell the 3,000 disciples that they don't have to hide their track. In the name of the Sky Demon, collect the blood spirits as soon as possible. Yes. Finally, sect leader Gon-Tian bowed and poured the blood spirits in the cauldron into the pool. Then, he turned and left. When he was far away, the Blood Child's Holy Infant's eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. Humph, lowly human. You're only fit to be a sacrifice for the Netherworld race. As soon as he finished speaking, the blood-red robe on his body dissipated, and he walked into the pool of blood. Instantly, the pool of blood surged, and endless blood chi turned into a mist that shrouded his body. Above his head, a faint shadow stepped out in the air. It looked ferocious. A blood-red mark flashed between its eyebrows. It was like the eye of the god of the Netherworld, and it emitted an evil fluctuation that made one's heart palpitate. The Sky Demon, ha! This generation will be the golden age of the Netherworld race. When I control the divine seal of the Netherworld King and bring my clan back, all of you will become stepping stones on the road to heaven for the Netherworld race. Chapter 980. At the foot of the barren mountain was a lush, ancient forest. The mountain breeze blew gently and the fog moved freely. It was as if there was an illusion. Qingshan, are you sure that thing is in this mountain? Meng Mo frowned and looked at the young man in front of her. Since the day they parted ways with Ling Xiao, they had come to this barren mountain and joined the Gone Sky Divine Sect. Chen Qingshan cultivated the Akalanatha Pluto incantation, which was inherited from sect leader Gone Tian. But now, he realized that it wasn't the Pluto incantation that led him here. It was more like an evil summoning. If Chen Qingshan hadn't accidentally awakened the Pluto sacred body when he cultivated the Pluto incantation, he wouldn't have been able to resist it. It shouldn't be wrong. Chen Qingshan's eyes were cold. He was no longer the junior brother who followed Phoenix Rouge. Now, he looked more like an evil demon. It seems that the Pluto incantation you cultivate is just a means for sect leader Gone Tian to control the world. Meng Mo was an ancient demon after all. She was knowledgeable. Although she was a demon, she wasn't an evil demon. After seeing what the Gone Sky Divine Sect did, even she felt a trace of fear. They killed creatures, old and young, just to refine their blood and souls into spirits for sect leader Gone Tian to cultivate. This kind of behavior was not tolerated in the world. What was more hateful was that since Ling Xiao came to the upper world, this group of evil demons became even more unscrupulous. They slaughtered people in the name of the Sky Demon. It was outrageous. I've already sent a message to the Lord. There must be another expert behind sect leader Gone Tian. I can feel the source of the evil nether chi in the depths of this barren mountain. Chen Qingshan shook his head. Compared to sect leader Gone Tian, the aura in the depths of the mountain made him feel more terrified. Nether chi? Could it be the Nether race? Meng Mo's eyes narrowed. In her impression, the Pluto sacred body wasn't a human inheritance. She didn't know how Chen Qingshan had awakened such a body. However, the Nether race was the most powerful race in the world hundreds of thousands of years ago. It was said that this race was born in the underworld and had the power to control the underworld. Even the ancient gods were afraid of them, which was why they joined forces with the other races to seal them. Could it be that there were still remnants of the Nether race living in the Azure Sky realm? No matter who it is, anyone who dares to tarnish the Lord's reputation deserves to die. Chen Qingshan said indifferently. There was a sinister and domineering look on his face, which caused Meng Mo's heart to tremble. She felt an inexplicable sense of fascination. I see how charming Qingshan is. I think Qingshan should be the same when she sees me. At the same time, in the far west of the Azure Sky, this place was a Buddhist holy land. The world-famous Brahma Holy Land was located on the shore of the Adversity Sea. It was rumored that the end of the Adversity Sea was connected to another greater world. However, the ninth heaven demon was sealed there. The Lord of Brahma Heaven was appointed by the mandate of heaven to come to this barren land, establish a sect, and preach the Buddhist doctrine. It was all in order to gather the power of all living beings and suppress this world. Therefore, the Sea of Adversity, also known as the Sea of Buddha, implied that life and death was a realm. Destroy this world, seek death in life, and comprehend Buddha in death. Seeing through life and death and attaining great success in Buddhism. Buddha talks about the equality of all living things, and Buddha talks about laying down the butcher's knife. Compared to the Daotian Academy, the disciples of the Brahma Holy Land were more diverse. Any living being with flesh and blood, as long as they had Buddhist thoughts in their heart and were fated with Buddhism, could come here to join the Buddhist Holy Land. From then on, they would become Buddhist believers and pursue equality in the world. Therefore, the Western Buddha was a true God in the eyes of all living beings. He was far more powerful than the Realm Lord Palace. Of course, it was the same for the other three extremities. The Eastern Ghost Lord, the Southern Demon Lord, and the Northern Xianyuan Human Lord had all formed their own forces and controlled one of the extremities. They were hundreds of millions of miles away from the Realm Lord Palace. However, the Realm Lord had gone missing, and the four extremities were strangely silent. Obviously, with the four extremities' foresight and shrewdness, they had also sensed the aura of a conspiracy. At this time, in a peaceful mountain city under the Buddha mountain, a figure wrapped in a black robe was sitting by the roadside, eating a bowl of noodles. His face was inexplicably pale, and his aura was weak. There was even a faint smell of blood. It was obvious that he had just experienced a dangerous situation. Have you heard? Something happened in the Xinwu dynasty the day before yesterday. What can happen in the Xinwu dynasty? With the foundation of this imperial dynasty, how many people in the Azure world would dare to provoke them? That's right. The martial emperor's legacy has been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years. There are countless experts in the imperial dynasty. Who has the guts to provoke them? It's not the martial emperor city. It's the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty under the Xinwu dynasty. The Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty. At the corner of the street, a few young disciples were drinking and chatting happily. Slap. Hearing the discussion, the black-robed young man suddenly put down the wooden chopsticks in his hand. There was a hint of gloominess between his brows. That's right. It's said that the Crown Prince of the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty, Jiying, stole the fiancée of the Ling people's young master, and was killed by the young master in the imperial palace of the Ling people. What? Didn't Crown Prince Jiying just get engaged to the praising the Empress of the Immortal Phoenix Ancient Dynasty? Could it be that exciting? The Gu clan is really something. A woman getting married to two people? No wonder. With the strength of the Taigu Ling people, I'm afraid that even if they destroy the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty, the Xinwu dynasty can only swallow their anger. That's right. That Crown Prince Jiying is already one of the top 100 monstrous geniuses in the Azure world. However, he was still killed by the young master of the Ling people. Not only that, it's said that his sworn brothers were also killed by the young master when they wanted to congratulate him. Tisk tsk. He provoked someone he shouldn't have. Even death can't wipe out his crimes. Boom! However, the moment they finished speaking, they suddenly felt a gust of gloomy and vast spiritual aura beside them. Then, they felt a pair of ferocious eyes staring at them. When they turned their heads to look, the black-robed young man was already standing in front of them. The young man had an ordinary appearance. His expression was firm, and his pair of black eyes were filled with intense hatred. You just said that Crown Prince Jiying and his sworn brothers were all killed by the young master of the Ling people? At this moment, his voice was somewhat hoarse, giving off an inexplicably eerie and evil feeling. Who are you? Do King know you? If I just tell you when you ask me, wouldn't I lose face? Poochie! The black-robed young man stretched out his palm, revealing a strange black blade under his black robe. As if it was connected to his palm, he directly cut off the head of the person who opened his mouth. Yes. This matter has already spread throughout the Azure world. The Holy Spirit Emperor was also killed. The remaining people's hearts trembled. The wine that they had just drunk flowed down their pants. Jihanyu, how is it? Dead. Poochie. The blade light gradually turned cold, and 4 heads neatly fell to the ground. The black-robed young man picked up the unfinished wine on the table and raised his head to drink it. At this moment, his eyes had already turned blood-red. Even his originally delicate and clean face had an inexplicably sinister look. Young master of the Ling people, you deserve to die. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure had already stepped into the void, flying towards the Holy Spirit Immortal Dynasty at an extremely fast speed. Kid, are you angry? You and I are fated. Why don't you stop resisting and obediently fuse with me? I'll help you kill all living beings. Chapter 981. Don't even think about it. Qin Chen fiercely clenched his teeth. His eyes flickered alternately with black and clear light. It was indescribably strange. Don't even think about it? Kid, even if you resist, you'll be affected by my demonic nature sooner or later. Do you think you have any other choice? I'm just worried that you'll be killed by that young master if you don't make up your mind. What a pity. The voice seemed to come from Qin Chen's soul sea. It contained endless demonic nature. Don't worry. As long as you're willing to sacrifice your body to me, you'll still be able to control it. I'll make it into a perfect killing tool. Cultivation is all about killing and longevity, isn't it? I won't be tricked by you a second time. Qin Chen snorted coldly as a clear radiance blossomed from his eyes, completely suppressing the devil intent. Brothers Han Yu, don't worry. I'll avenge you. In the palace of the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty, a beautiful figure in white walked over from the sky. Layers of golden lotuses bloomed in the sky, revealing a supreme Buddhist nature. Yaoguang twirled her Buddhist beads and looked at the two guards in golden armor in front of the palace. She bowed slightly. Amitabha, benefactors, may I know if the young master of the Ling people, Ling Xiao, is in the palace? She had chased after Ling Xiao all the way from the Ling people, but she always brushed past the Ling people. So, until now, she still didn't know if Ling Xiao was the demon in her heart. Was it fate or sin? Stop. Young Master Ling has left the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty. The expressions of the two golden-armored guards turned cold as their eyes turned gloomy. Amitabha, thank you, benefactor. Yaoguang sighed and turned to walk down the street. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but during the 10 days of chasing after Ling Xiao, she suddenly felt that the evil in her heart had disappeared a lot. She had already learned a lot of Buddhist fate on the way. Bodhi heart, azure body. Buddha said that everything in the world was empty except for karma. Perhaps all the things that happened in the lower realm were just an experience for him to achieve great success in his dharma? Buzz. Around Yaoguang's body, there were suddenly tens of thousands of rays of white light, and Buddhist radiance lingered around him. At this moment, her thoughts became clear. Karma was severed, and she actually had a chance to break through. However, just as this killing intent was released, another thought rose uncontrollably. It was like greed and infatuation, blocking her state of mind from reaching the saint realm. The 3 live scriptures, a lifetime of cultivating the 9 precepts and 3 transgressions, a lifetime of Buddhism, a lifetime of cultivating the 10,000 tribulations and 1,000 tribulations, a lifetime of great success in colored glaze, a lifetime of cultivating the heart without second thoughts, a lifetime of Bodhi. In her first life, she had been in seclusion for 200 years. She had read all the Buddhist scriptures in the Sacred Grounds Scripture Depository. She had comprehended their true meaning and cultivated to the God-Dharch realm. In her second life, she grew out her hair and returned to the secular world. She sealed her own cultivation and walked for another 100 years. She became accustomed to the suffering of the world, and her body became venerable. In her third life, she went through the tribulation with her heart. Originally, she wanted to save all living beings and show her divinity in front of the masses. However, she didn't do it when she met him. Yaoguang's figure trembled slightly, and for the first time, her jade feet were stained with dust. A trace of blood unexpectedly spilled from the corner of her mouth. At this moment, she seemed to have understood. When the killing intent rose, the greed disappeared, and vice versa. She also didn't seem to understand why she was bound by the most shallow greed, anger, and infatuation after cultivating for 300 years and having a natural Buddhist nature. In the divine battlefield, the ancestral land of the Ling people, Ling Xiao stood on the dragon's head and whistled from the sky. Wherever he passed, all the overlords of the Ling people looked respectful and bowed. Young master. In front of the temple, Ling Yuanqing was wearing a white robe with a gentle smile on his face. What happened in the Shenwu dynasty in the past few days couldn't escape his eyes and ears. Although Ling Zhao's actions were a bit biased, it didn't affect the overall situation. It was just a celestial dynasty. Not to mention killing the crown prince. Even if he dug out the ancestral patriarchs of the sacred spirit dynasty and killed them and buried them, the lord of the Shenwu dynasty wouldn't dare to say a word. Besides, he always felt that with Ling Zhao's scheming mind, there must be a deeper meaning to his domineering and arrogant behavior. Should we send someone to exterminate the Ji family? Ling Yuanqing asked indifferently, but Ling Xiao shook his head slightly. No need for now. Qin Chen was most likely a heaven's mandate. He still needed to use this dynasty to find his traces. The Azure world was too vast. Folding Shadow had just stepped into this world. No matter how powerful he was still not strong enough. Young master, there are only 100 days left until the Lord of the Tao Heaven Manners lecture. At that time, many heavenly talents of the Azure world will be there. As for the Gu family, no one is allowed to touch them. Ling Zhao's eyes suddenly flashed with coldness. Ling Yuanqing's expression turned serious. He finally understood why Patriarch Bewildering Butterfly returned in anger. It seemed that the Empress of the Gu family really had some weight in the young master's heart. But that shouldn't be the case. Ling Xiao had only been in the upper world for 10 days. How did he get involved with the Empress of the Celestial Dynasty? 13th Ancestor, in the future, unless I personally summon you, none of the overlords of the Ling people are allowed to interfere with the matters of the Azure world. Ling Xiao calmly glanced at Ling Yuanqing, then lifted his feet and walked towards the palace. It wasn't that the Ling people couldn't be used. It was just that this chaotic world had just begun. The Ling people's foundation needed to be used at the most crucial moment to save the world. Demons stood high above the 9 heavens, overlooking the common people. The chaotic world was mine, and so was the creation of the world. In the hall, Ling Yuanqing didn't say anything else. He bowed and didn't get up for a long time. With the ancestral token of the Ling people bestowed by the Patriarch, Ling Zhao's safety wasn't too much to worry about. Moreover, although it had only been 10 days, this young master's temperament and methods already made him, a supreme being who had lived for 60,000 years, feel wary. Buzz. With a thought, Ling Zhao's figure instantly appeared in the realm. At this time, Phoenix Rouge, Su Yan, and the others were all cultivating. Only Yi Qingchan and Zi Yan stood in front of the hall, one in front and one behind, as if waiting for his return. Qingchan? Ziyan? Young master. The 2 girls smiled. You're back. You're waiting for me. Yes. Young master, since I've returned to the Azure continent, I want to return to the demon realm to take a look. Ziyan's face flashed with a hint of worry. In the end, she still had hatred in her heart and couldn't let it go. Although Ling Xiao had come to the Azure continent and was the young master of the Taigu Ling people, there were many experts in the demon realm who were hostile to the human race. Once Ling Xiao appeared rashly, it would inevitably attract disaster. Therefore, she planned to go to the demon realm and be a secret chess piece of the young master. When she was chased out of the Thunder Dragon race, she was still young and pure. Now that she followed Ling Xiao, her cultivation had reached the Supreme Being realm, and she had hundreds of years of experience in the sea. She was confident that she wouldn't run away again. It was also time to go back and see her father. Do you want me to go with you? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, but Zi Yan suddenly blushed and waved her hand. No need. Young master, I'm just going back to take a look. If you're not happy, go back to the Ling people and find me. Ling Xiao didn't say much. In the end, although Zi Yan didn't have luck, her talent wasn't bad. With her entering the demon realm first, she might play an unexpected role at the crucial moment. Young master, before you leave, Ziyan. Ziyan wants. What do you want? Ling Zhao's eyes revealed a playful look. Before Ziyan could speak, he had already pulled her into his embrace. Meow, young master, that's not what I meant. I just want to thank young master for his kindness. Ziyan's face blushed. Especially in front of Yi Qinchan, it made her feel a different kind of stimulation. Young master is going to be bad, meow meow meow. Qinchan, you come too. Boom. Above the sky palace, clouds and rain suddenly rose, and a fragrance wantonly. Chapter 982. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ziyan had already left the divine battle domain the day before and headed to the extreme south. Ling Xiao sat in front of the sky palace, cultivating with his eyes closed. Beside him, Yi Qinchan burned incense and brewed tea, carefully holding an ancient book. Buzz! At a certain moment, Ling Zhao's mind moved, and the space in front of him suddenly collapsed. 2 golden imprints appeared out of thin air, deriving endless mysteries. During these 7 days, Ling Xiao had been studying the 2 reincarnation imprint. Unfortunately, he wasn't destined. Apart from sensing a trace of reincarnation aura, he didn't gain anything else. But, just as Ling Xiao sighed softly and was about to withdraw the 2 imprints, a soft sound of surprise came from beside him. Bai Ling walked over from the horizon, looking at the 2 reincarnation imprints with a confused expression. Ling you recognize this item? Ling Zhao's eyes flashed. When Bai Ling's Core C was destroyed by the Blood Soul Hall's master, the system had rewarded her with a Heavenly Wheel Core C. It was said that this Core C could generate reincarnation on its own. Could it be that this girl had seen through its wonders? Big brother, can I see it? Bai Ling shook her head blankly. After getting Ling Zhao's permission, she stretched out her hand and held the 2 imprints in her hand. Buzz. Then, a shocking scene appeared. The 2 imprints, which were originally unrelated, suddenly melted like golden light and merged into one in Bai Ling's hand. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly, while Bai Ling sat cross-legged with her eyes closed, entering an epiphany in the void. Around her, countless phenomena began to evolve. Mountains, seas of stars, and phantoms of fiend gods appeared alternately. Vaguely, there seemed to be an illusory image of a heavenly palace floating in the 9 heavens. It encompassed Ji Hongyu and stood towering above Bai Ling. The heavenly palace was tens of thousands of feet tall, magnificent and golden, and had a momentum that suppressed the world. In front of the heavenly palace, an extremely illusory figure stood with his hands behind his back, looking down through the ages. Boom! Heaven, earth, and primordial intent descended with a rumble, and it almost penetrated the entire realm. Bai Ling's pretty face paled as she woke up from her epiphany. However, around his body, there was an opportunity that could be seen with the naked eye, taking shape and then dissipating into nothingness. At this moment, there was a trace of doubt in her eyes. It was as if she had experienced the cycle of reincarnation, and there was a sense of transcendence. Ling, what happened to you? Ling Xiao frowned slightly as he looked at the merged reincarnation mark. He saw that a corner of the mark was obviously missing a piece. Clearly, this imprint was still incomplete, and there was only one left. Big brother, I seem to have seen some strange scenes. It's as if it's my previous life. Bai Ling reached out and held the mark in her hand. It feels very familiar, but this mark is a little resistant to me. Familiar? Conflict? Ling Xiao pondered in his heart. Could Bai Ling be an expert in the reincarnation divine palace in her previous life? Big brother, there should be one more reincarnation mark. As long as we find all 3 marks, we will be able to see the true meaning of reincarnation. Bai Ling returned the 2 marks to Ling Xiao with a solemn expression. Okay, I understand. In that case, there should be another person summoned by the reincarnation divine palace in the Azure world. As long as he could find this person, he might be able to discover the secrets of the reincarnation divine palace, or even the reincarnation abyss. To see eternal life in the cycle of reincarnation, this great Tao was the strongest in the world. If someone could control the cycle of reincarnation, they would be able to control the true power of life and death. Buzz. Just as Ling Xiao was muttering to himself with a cold glint in his eyes, his expression suddenly froze and his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. Young Master! In the Ling people's divine palace, Ling Yuanqing slowly walked over and bowed to Ling Xiao. 13th Ancestor. A mystic realm has appeared in the northwest of the Azure world. It should be a Supreme Being's tomb. Young Master, are you interested? The Azure world was originally a world of the human race, and it had given birth to countless amazing people. The tomb of an ancient Supreme Being would most likely contain his inheritance. To the Ling people, such an inheritance was naturally not very attractive. However, the young master of the Azure world's celestial sect had always killed and fought for treasures in the mystic realm to train his Tao heart. Therefore, there were almost no experts in such a mystic realm. It was mostly a competition between the younger generation. A Supreme Being's tomb? Of course, I'm going. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. His eyes were calm. He was not interested in the Supreme Being's inheritance, but he was looking forward to the leaks that were about to appear. Young Master, these are the cultivation methods, elixirs, and spiritual treasures that the Ling people have prepared for you. Oh! Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly and reached out to take the Qiankuan bag from Ling Yuanqing. Then, he lifted his foot and walked out of the hall. With a thought, the shadow of a golden dragon suddenly appeared in the sky. The golden dragon's 4 claws were covered in flames, and the Emperor Qi outside its body evolved into auspicious clouds that rose under its body. However, there were 2 golden locks around his neck, and he was dragging a white jade-treasured carriage. Flowing light flickered on the carriage, and multicolored light shot out in all directions. A tall and burly figure stood in front of the carriage, looking at Ling Xiao respectfully. It was Brute Demon. The Azure world was a place where demons ran rampant. Throughout history, many demons had submitted to the celestial sects of the ancient clans and were used as slaves. Even the Brahma Holy Land had demon disciples, so it was not surprising. Not to mention, Brute Demon's cultivation was only in the Venerable Realm, but his combat strength was comparable to the Saint Realm. Especially the ancient tyrant body, which could be said to be indestructible, so it was perfect for him to be a guard. It was not until Ling Xiao's figure walked into the carriage and lay down that Brute Demon raised his arm and commanded the golden dragon to fly into the distance. The sea of clouds stretched for thousands of miles, and the demonic aura roared. The Azure world suddenly surged with wind and clouds. Countless disciples of the ancient clans and celestial sects came out of their sects and gathered in the northwest of the Azure world. At the same time, in front of the imperial palace of the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty, a thin figure in a black robe descended from the sky with a sad look in his eyes. Along the way, Qin Chun had already heard of many major events in the Azure world. However, the world unanimously said that the young master of the Ling people was righteous and cared about the common people. Ji Ying, on the other hand, was a villain who coveted beauty and reaped what he sowed. Ridiculous! Simply ridiculous! Qin Chun naturally knew the character of his brothers very well. Ji Ying's 3rd brother was determined and kind. After going through hardships, he finally walked his own path. However, whether it was when he was in dire straits or when he ascended to the position of crown prince, he loved and respected him and his 2 brothers. He started from humble beginnings and was loyal to his friendship. How could such a person covet women? The people of the world were stupid and only knew how to change the rudder according to the wind. Therefore, Qin Chun came. He wanted to personally ask the people of the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty why his brothers and Han Yu died. Not only did he want to avenge them, but he also wanted to give them justice and fairness. Unknowingly, Qin Chen's eyes quietly flashed with a touch of scarlet, and even the aura on his body became gloomy and evil. On his chest, a red light faintly lit up like an evil eye, revealing the fierceness of eternity. Chapter 983. Stop! Who are you? In front of the imperial palace of the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty, 2 guards in golden armor waved their spears and stopped Qin Chen. The young man suddenly reached out and held a dragon token in front of him. The Crown Prince's token? The 2 guards looked at each other in surprise and said coldly, "You're the Crown Prince's sworn brother? Please wait a moment." Both of them sneered in their hearts, but Ji Ying's matter was too important for them to make a decision on their own. After a while, the guards returned with a smile and welcomed Qin Chen into the imperial palace. However, the moment the latter stepped into the temple door closed with a loud bang, and there was no longer a trace of light. "You're Qin Chen, right?" A deep sigh came from the top of the palace. Qin Chen took a deep breath and bowed to the figure on the throne. "I'm Qin Chen, the sworn brother of Crown Prince Jiying. I know you. Why have you come to the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty?" The current ruler of the dynasty was the Holy Spirit Emperor's elder brother, Ji Huan. Originally, he had no hope of inheriting the throne and had long hidden himself from the world. Who would have thought that the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty would encounter such a huge change and give him a new path to immortality? "I heard that Crown Prince Ji-ing offended the Ling people and was killed. I'm here to verify it." According to Qin Chen's understanding of his third brother, although his strength was not at the top of the Azure continent, no one in the younger generation would be able to kill him in a fair fight. Moreover, his eldest brother and second brother were both here. How could they be killed by a young man who was born less than a month ago? There must be something fishy about this. That's right. Ji Ying and his son snatched the fiancée of the Ling people's young master and were killed. Everyone knows about this, so what's there to be suspicious about? Ji Huan snorted coldly, his eyes flashing with killing intent. He naturally cherished the emperor's throne very much. Now that Qin Chen had taken the initiative to come to him, it gave him a chance to curry favor with the Ling people. What? How could this be? My third brother is an upright man. How could he do such a ridiculous thing? There must be something hidden here. Qin Chen's expression trembled as he instinctively felt a trace of uneasiness. Secrets? If you have any secrets, you'd better ask Master Ling Xiao in person. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Huan abruptly rose to his feet and slammed his palm down towards Qin Chen. Terrifying saint might exploded in the air, and the entire void was instantly torn apart. Instantly, Qin Chen felt a chill run through his body. In front of a Saint Realm expert, he had no room to resist at all. How could this be? How could the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty be so cowardly, actually colluding with the Ling people? However, just as the golden palm imprint was about to land on Qin Chen's body, the black robe around him suddenly shattered. What was revealed was an ancient battle armor that looked like a withered tree. In the center of the chest area of the battle armor, there was a scarlet eyeball that looked sinister and disdainful. A mere Saint Realm expert dares to kill the host chosen by this immortal king. A low and hoarse voice resounded in the air. Immediately after, the ancient battle armor emitted an infinite amount of light. Black mist curled around it, and a faint demonic shadow stepped on the ground and blocked the golden palm imprint. Boom! The world shook, and the cracks in the abyss extended for thousands of feet. The entire Saint Spirit Emperor Palace collapsed, and in the midst of the smoke, Qin Chen's figure disappeared from where he stood. Ji Huan's eyes narrowed, and a trace of surprise flashed across his dignified and solemn face. "Men! Emperor! Quickly send someone to the Ling people and inform Master Ling Xiao that Ji Ying and his accomplices are seeking revenge. Yes. 2,000 miles away from the Saint Spirit Emperor City. Qin Chen's figure suddenly fell from the void. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth, and his face became even paler. He lowered his head and looked at the withered wooden battle armor on his body. There seemed to be a complicated look in his eyes. He had found this battle armor in an ancient secret realm at the bottom of the Western Adversity Sea. However, this battle armor was extremely strange. Not only did it have its own spiritual consciousness, but it was also filled with an indescribable demonic intent. Although Qin Chen desired power, he had a great resistance against evil. Therefore, he turned and left as soon as he saw this battle armor. However, this battle armor lied to him and said that he was an ancient remnant soul that was imprisoned by this demonic armor. As long as he could help him break free, he would thank him greatly. He also swore on his Tao heart that if he lied, he would let him fall into eternal darkness. Qin Chen's nature was pure, and he didn't think too much. He followed the remnant soul's instructions and dripped his essence blood on the battle armor. However, he didn't expect that the next scene would be the beginning of his nightmare. A strange blood-red eye suddenly opened in the center of the battle armor. Then, it turned into a withered vine and wrapped around his body like a maggot. Even if Qin Chen resisted with all his might, he couldn't struggle and fainted in the end. When he woke up again, his entire body had already fused with the battle armor, and he had been reduced to his current appearance that was neither human nor ghost. Although he could feel the terrifying power contained in the battle armor, but this power was too strange. As long as Qin Chen thought about it, his body would turn into a killing machine. He could change into all kinds of divine weapons at will and kill people without leaving a trace. Qin Chen didn't think of breaking the battle armor to break free. However, with his cultivation of the 4th level of the Venerable Realm, he couldn't shake the armor at all. A few days later, Qin Chen learned the name of the battle armor from this battle armor. It was the Fu Sang Ancient Armor. It was said that this armor was forged from the branches of the number 1 divine wood in the 9 heavens, the Fu Sang Divine Wood. It was born with divinity and was originally a supreme treasure of the Immortal Clan. However, Fu Sang had a spirit. It was refined into an armor by Hiromu of Goguryeo of the Immortal Clan, so it had resentment in its heart. After hundreds of thousands of years of killing, its divinity turned into demonic, causing Guangmu to fall into the demonic path. During the Great War of Gods and Demons, although the Immortal Clan unified the 9 heavens, the clan's experts also suffered heavy losses. And this immortal king wearing the Fu Sang battle armor died in the mortal realm. Time flowed by. Although Hiromu of Goguryo's physical body was destroyed, a wisp of divine consciousness unexpectedly merged with the battle armor and descended. A dignified immortal king, whose corpse hadn't even turned cold, was reborn into an armor. One could imagine the anger in his heart. Unfortunately, with the physical body of a human cultivator, it was impossible to withstand the immortal king's sacred power. Moreover, the Fu Sang Divine Wood was a supreme treasure of the 9 heavens, and it was definitely not something ordinary people could control. It was only when Qin Chen appeared and was tricked by Guangmu that the two merged into one body that the latter could see the light of day again. Now, the two of them were master and servant, but it was more like a symbiotic relationship. As long as Qin Chen was willing, Hiromu of Goguryeo could completely merge with him and become a part of his body. From then on, his mortal body would be forged into an undying supreme treasure of heaven and earth. How is it, kid? I saved your life again. Shouldn't you be thanking me properly? Hiromu of Goguryeo sneered, but Qin Chen's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation for the first time. Originally, he believed in the Tao that evil could not prevail over good. But now, he had traveled all over the Azure continent, and he hadn't seen a single person upholding justice. They were nothing more than a bunch of cowardly people who wanted to curry favor with the powerful and were afraid of death. Especially today's actions of the Holy Spirit's celestial dynasty, it caused a trace of unquenchable resentment to grow in his heart. Since he couldn't find an immortal, he might as well find a demon. Chapter 984. You said that you were an immortal king who was trapped in this Fu Sang battle armor? Qin Chen took a deep breath, and a determined look flashed across his face. That's right. I, Guangmu, am a peerless immortal king. Back then, during the great war of gods and devils, I was framed and died at the shores of the Adversity Sea. The reason why the Adversity Sea is black is because of my blood. Hiromu of Goguryu's voice was calm, but to Qin Chen, it sounded like he was bragging. If you're so awesome, why don't you just say that you created the Adversity Sea with your urine? A immortal king was trapped by an ancient armor, and you still have the nerve to brag in front of me? What will happen if you and I fuse? Although Qin Chen didn't have much faith in this immortal king's character, Qin Chen didn't have much faith in him. But now, if he wanted to take revenge, he could only rely on this armor. He hadn't seen Ling Zhao's strength with his own eyes. He had only heard rumors that this young master of the Ling people had fought the three saints of the divine martial world alone and had joined forces with the young master of the World Lord Palace to severely injure the Sky Demon. Of course, Qin Chen didn't believe all these rumors. After all, even if a dog of the Taigu Ling people came out for a walk, the world would probably think that the dog could eat dragons. However, even if Ling Zhao's strength wasn't enough, there would definitely be strong people following him. With Qin Chen's current level, it would be difficult for him to fight against a saint, let alone the heaven and earth supremes of the Ling people. Consequences? The consequences are that in the future, you will be the ruler of the Azure world. Even if you go to the immortal realm, with my reputation and status, you will at least be the master of an immortal palace. Hiromu of Goguryu's tone was cold and arrogant, and his voice contained an unparalleled dominance. Am I still me? Qin Chen sighed softly in his heart. However, after thinking about it for a while, he felt somewhat relieved. His three elder brothers had all died, and Hanyu had also failed to escape from the evil hands. What was the point of whether he was still him? Back then, the few of them had made an agreement that they would rather die than live together. Now, he had broken his promise. If that was the case, what was there to be conflicted about? Forget it. Then let's fuse? Boom. However, just as Qin Chen's voice fell, a beam of golden light suddenly shot up into the sky from the distant horizon, dyeing the vast expanse of blue sky golden. Within the golden splendor stood a supreme divine palace. It was ancient and dilapidated, but it contained a supreme aura. A relic has appeared? Qin Chen's eyes narrowed. He pondered for a moment. How long will it take for us to fuse together? At least 1 year, at most 10 years. Hiromu of Goguryo said in a low voice. His blood-red eye also looked at the towering pillar of light with some surprise. From the looks of it, there must be a great fortune hidden in this secret realm. Since Qin Chen had agreed to fuse with him, their fates were now completely intertwined. The stronger he was, the more fortune he would have in his hands. For Hiromu of Goguryo, this was also a kind of advantage. Now, his divine soul could only exist with this divine armor. According to Hiromu of Goguryo's thoughts, only if Qin Chen was strong enough to reverse yin and yang would he have a chance to break free from the suppression of the Fu Sang divine wood. 1 year, seeing that there was a hint of hesitation on Qin Chen's face, Hiromu of Goguryo's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. At this moment, Qin Chen probably wanted to go to the secret realm to see if he could meet the young master of the Ling people so that he could avenge his brothers. In the end, he still did not trust him enough. He was afraid that the fusion of the two would cause him to lose his own consciousness. Even if you and I have not completely fused, I now treat you as my host. A saint can kill you. Hiromu of Goguryo's tone was full of confidence. Just the power of the divine armor alone was not something a saint could break. Moreover, he had never heard of the young master of the Ling people. How could a young man be his match? Only by avenging Qinchen could he put aside all his worries and focus on the immortal Tao with him. They could forge glory together. A saint can kill you. Qinchen suddenly clenched his fist. His originally white and slender hand suddenly turned into a pitch-black ancient blade. He had seen the power of the demonic armor with his own eyes. The new Holy Spirit Emperor's strength was at least at the 7th level of the Saint realm. However, he had only injured him and had not damaged his foundation. In the Azure world, as long as the secret realms did not appear in the immemorial secret realms or immortal inheritances, the experts of the various ancient clans and immortal sects would not participate. If the young master of the Ling people appeared, perhaps it would be a great opportunity for him to kill him. Senior, I want to go to the secret realm first and see if I can find the young master of the Ling people. All right. You can only concentrate on your cultivation if you have no distractions. However, you have to promise me that if I help you take revenge, you must not slack off and give up on yourself. Although it is a good thing to value relationships, the immortal Tao is long. How can you be bound by worldly feelings? Hiromu of Goguryo's tone was serious, like a senior advising a disciple. All right. In the end, Qinchen did not say anything else. He turned to look at the place surrounded by golden light. Ji Hanyu's smile slowly appeared in front of him. Every frown and smile made him feel incomparable pain. Hanyu, don't worry. I will definitely ask Ling Xiao and the entire Taigu Ling people to die with you. Achoo! In the void thousands of miles to the north of the Azure world, Ling Xiao sat in the jade carriage, holding a wine cup in one hand and Yi Qinchan in the other, looking into the distance. At a certain moment, he seemed to feel a faint chill in his heart, but there was no nervousness on his face. Instead, there was a gentle smile on his face. Buzz. A buzzing sound suddenly came from the universe ring. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and took out a voice transmission talisman, only to hear Ling Yuanqing's voice. Young Master, the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty sent a message saying that one of Ji Ying's sworn brothers has appeared today. Oh? Is he here? Ling Xiao nodded slightly, not surprised at all. The people of the Heavenly Mandate were more ambitious than the sky and would definitely take revenge. Not to mention that he was the young master of the Ling people. Even if the Realm Lord killed his brother, it would definitely be a 30-year drama. However, since it was a message, Qinchen must have escaped. Otherwise, the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty would definitely capture him and hand him over to Ling Xiao personally. However, he still escaped when the Divine Spirit Celestial Emperor personally took action. Young Master, should we capture that Divine Spirit Celestial Emperor and search his soul to see if there is anything fishy? Ling Yuanqing's voice was extremely cold, as if the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty, who was high and mighty in the eyes of ordinary forces, was just a livestock that could be slaughtered at any time in his eyes. No need. If we kill him now, people will definitely guess that it was me, the Ling people, who did it. After a while, someone will eliminate the Divine Spirit. Ling Xiao smiled gently, and there seemed to be Tao patterns flowing in his eyes. He was calm as if everything was under his control. If Qinchen died in the Divine Spirit Celestial Dynasty, he would be surprised. 13th Ancestor, did the Divine Spirit Celestial Emperor say anything else? For example, how did that young man escape? That person is called Qinchen. He should be 200 years old. His appearance is ordinary and his face is pale. His cultivation is at the 4th level of the Venerable Realm, but he is wearing an extremely strange armor that can block the attacks of the Saint Realm. Chapter 985. Strange Armor. Ling Xiao raised his brows slightly. What armor in this world could be more strange than the unforgiven demonic armor on his body? However, from the looks of it, the destiny of this person was most likely on this armor. However, he did not know how many slashes and punches this armor could withstand. That's right. According to the Holy Spirit Emperor, the armor seemed to be made of divine wood. There was a one-eyed blood eye in the middle of the chest. Young master, do you want to send someone? No need. Ling Xiao said indifferently and took out another voice transmission talisman. Stacked shadow, lead the secret guards and follow the path of the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty to the Supreme Being's ruins. Find all suspicious people and spread the news that I am about to descend on the Supreme Being's ruins. According to Ling Xiao's guess, since Qin Chen dared to chase to the Holy Spirit Celestial Dynasty, it was most likely because he was determined to avenge his brothers. As for the Supreme Being's ruins, perhaps it was the best opportunity for him to kill Ling Xiao. He was in the dark, Ling Xiao was in the light, and he also had this strange armor. No matter how he looked at it, Ling Xiao seemed to be in a situation where he would definitely die. And Ling Xiao only needed to deliberately reveal a flaw and expose his whereabouts, making this person of destiny feel that he could do it. Naturally, the harvest would be a matter of time. On the other hand, Xiao Bo had already returned to the clan for more than half a month, and there was no news of him until now. Could it be that this fellow had been killed before he could act cool? Of course, with this fellow's luck, the person who could kill him was most likely someone with a higher luck. In that case, there was nothing to worry about. After all, they were all leaked. The better they grew, the more delicious they would be. Yes. Stacked Shadow's voice came from the voice transmission talisman, while Ling Xiao lazily lay in the carriage, holding Yi Qingchan in his arms and drinking the wine. The life of a villain was really boring. With a few casual voice transmissions and a cup of wine, the fate of some people and even some forces was decided. Unlike those people who were destined by the heavens, who worked themselves to death in search of good fortune, cultivated with all their might, and went through all sorts of trials and tribulations. They used their lives in exchange for being touched by a beautiful woman, only to realize in the end that everything was under the control of others. Don't you think it's infuriating? Young master, why are you so happy? Yi Qingchan pursed her red lips and a smile appeared on her face. Even if she knew that she was far less important than Gu Chaoxiai in Ling Zhao's heart. But what did it matter? As long as she could stay by young master's side, it would be a great fortune for her. Qingchan, come, let me tell you the story of the armored warrior. Northwest of the Azure continent, thousands of miles away. This place was called the Nihility region. It was where the Nihility Tao sect was located. It was rumored that this Tao sect had a heavenly sovereign overseeing it. It had a deep foundation and was very powerful. It was in charge of dozens of star regions. At this moment, a ray of golden light illuminated the heavens and the earth in the depths of the void. It formed into auspicious clouds, and it seemed like the will of a paragon had descended. It was the place where the supreme secret realm had appeared. However, at this moment, the entrance of the secret realm seemed to be covered by a barrier that blocked all prying eyes. At the entrance, there were already several figures in dark green Taoist robes standing there. They frowned as they looked at the golden light above their heads. Sect Master, I'm afraid we can't hide the movements of this secret realm anymore. At the head of the group, a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance frowned and pondered. He was the owner of the Nihility region, Sumo. Behind him, several Tao sect powerhouses sighed deeply, their faces filled with unwillingness. They had originally discovered this secret realm long ago. However, just yesterday, when they had joined forces to break the barrier at the entrance of the secret realm, it had caused a strange phenomenon in the heavens and earth, completely exposing this secret realm to the world. Forget it. Since this secret realm has appeared, It is not an opportunity for the nihility Dao sect. Tell the disciples to prepare. When the barrier is broken, let's enter the realm and find the fortune. The Lord of the Void sighed leisurely, turned around and left. Although the supreme relic had appeared in his nihility region, it was difficult for the nihility Dao sect to monopolize it with their strength. Moreover, a disciple had sent a message early this morning that the young master of the Taigu Ling people had rushed over from the deity battlefield to fight for the fortune in this realm. Even if he was unwilling, he could only let nature take its course. At the same time, in the ancient city closest to the supreme relic, a young man in a loose black robe descended from the sky. He looked up with a gloomy gaze and looked at the two large words in the center of the city gate. Cliff. Today, Qin Chen had also heard the news that Ling Xiao had rushed here. To Qin Chen, this was the best opportunity to avenge his brothers. The appearance of the secret realm, and the geniuses were fighting for it. Even if Ling Xiao had a Dao protector behind him, with the help of Hiromu of Goguryeo, he might still have a chance. Everything was within his expectations. He only needed to hide in the dark and find an opportunity to take revenge. However, just as Qin Chen's figure disappeared, another graceful figure appeared in the void. A cold smile appeared on that fair and beautiful face. Have you heard? The young master of the Taigu Ling people is also rushing over to Rock Cliff City. Really? The righteous Master Ling Xiao who joined forces with the young master of the Realm Lord Palace to severely injure that demon? Not only is he righteous, Master Ling Xiao is simply righteous. It is said that he was almost swallowed by the void turbulence that day when he saved a mortal from a domain. Even young Master Xue said that I am inferior to him. Is that true? Even young Master Xue has such a sigh. It seems that this Master Ling Xiao is really a role model for our generation. Not only that, a few days ago, the Crown Prince of the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty, Jiying, used his power to bully others and forced praising the Empress to marry him. In the end, he was killed by Master Ling Xiao in front of everyone. This Jiying only has himself to blame. Why did I hear that? Jiying and praising the Empress have an engagement. Master Ling Xiao's actions, are you stupid? Who is praising the Empress? She is one of the 10 sequences of our Qing Song Empire. With her talent and background, why would she need to marry Jiying? It's all because the Gu clan has declined and their foundation is not as good as before. That's why Jiying took advantage of the loophole. Now that you mention it, it makes sense. If I were praising the Empress, I would never marry into another dynasty. Right? What else is there to say? Lord Ling Xiao is righteous. Originally, Rock Cliff City was just a small city in the wilderness. There were not many people in the city, and even the city lord was just an exalted realm cultivator. However, early this morning, warships and ancient boats suddenly descended from the sky above the ancient city. Many descendants of aristocratic families and disciples of the ancient clans rushed over, wanting to fight for the Supreme Being's fortune. However, the news that the young master of the Ling people was also interested in the ruins was like a basin of cold water that instantly extinguished the desire in the hearts of many geniuses. Of course, for many of the female geniuses, this piece of news was a heavenly fortune in itself. If they were lucky enough to be favored by the young master of the Ling people, even if they were taken in as a servant, to most people, it was a fortune more tempting than the Supreme Being's ruins. I suggest that we arrange a banquet in the city before Master Ling Xiao arrives to welcome the young master. That makes sense. Let's do it at the Yunyan Pavilion in the city. My Li clan has some shares in this pavilion. Let's do it according to the highest standards. Atmosphere group, 100-year-old immortal wine, all must be included. Chapter 986. In the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty, a dragon pillar stood tall above the golden palace. The officials knelt and bowed solemnly. At the top of the golden palace, Gu Chaoxiai was wearing a red imperial robe. Her eyes were clear, and her hair was tied up on top of her head. She wore a purple and gold crown. She was breathtakingly beautiful. In fact, compared to a few days ago, Gu Chaoxiai showed the unparalleled elegance of an empress of the immortal dynasty. Cold, domineering, and peerless. Is there anything else to report? At this time, her jade-like hand was supporting her cheek. Her expression was languid, and her eyes were tired, but it added to her charm. In the past few days, she had returned to the imperial throne, controlled hundreds of territories of the Gu clan, and dealt with countless matters of the ancient dynasty. She was already tired. Fortunately, with the title of the young master of the Ling people's fiancé, no matter if it was the Gu clan or the other ancient families, no one dared to disobey her. But, that bastard, why was there no news at all? Your Majesty, Gu Yanqing's descendants have all been killed. Now, the immortal Phoenix Nation is stable and its citizens are harmonious. There is no more trouble. At the front, an elder in azure official robes bowed and reported. That's good. Gu Chaoxiai waved her hand and dismissed the officials. She held her forehead with one hand and seemed to be in deep thought. Now that she knew Ling Zhao's identity and methods, the worry and confusion in her heart dissipated. However, no matter how talented Ling Zhao was, it was still not something that could be done in a short period of time if he wanted to take control of the Azure world. In fact, with the power of the Realm Lord Palace suppressing the world, every step Ling Zhao took next could be said to be extremely dangerous. If it was in the past, Gu Chaoxiai would not care about his life. But now, she was hesitant, and some hope was rekindled in her heart. Your Majesty! In front of the palace, a golden-armored guard suddenly walked over and bowed to Gu Chaoxiai. Have you investigated? Gu Chaoxiai's pretty face turned solemn. She slowly stood up, and her expression returned to its usual coldness. Yes, I have. The sovereign secret realm is in the territory of the Nihility Dao sect. According to my investigation, a sovereign secret realm once perished there. He was an expert from the reincarnation divine palace. Other than that, no other experts perished there. The golden-armored guard's tone was respectful, but there was a trace of hesitation on his face. What happened? Monarch, Master Ling Zhao is on his way to the Void Zone. Oh, I got it. You may leave. Gu Chaoxiai nodded indifferently. Her eyes seemed to sparkle. Then, she stood up and walked out of the hall. With Ling Zhao's strength, ordinary prodigies were no match for him. However, I didn't go to the realm of void to help him or miss him. It's time for me to work hard on my cultivation and increase the foundation for my child's birth. The winds and clouds within 10,000 li of the void shook. A cyan phoenix shadow descended from the sky and landed in front of Gu Chaoxiai. The latter moved gracefully and stood on the head of the phoenix. Then, she sped toward the void zone. Monarch, where did you go? Do you even need to ask? I heard that Master Ling Zhao went to the void zone to train. I guess you were worried about him and rushed over. Worried? Master Ling Zhao is peerless and has the grace to crush his generation. In the entire Azure world, who dares to attack Master Ling Zhao? Are you stupid? When I said worried, I didn't mean dangerous. I meant he. If you were a woman, would you be tempted by the young lord? You're saying, let alone a woman, even if I were a man, I would want to marry young Master Ling Zhao. Many of the guards in the Immortal Phoenix Imperial Palace revealed a look of understanding as they watched the beautiful figure disappear into the distance. One day apart felt like 3 years. There were many temptations in this world. With such a peerless husband, of course, they had to keep a close eye on him. Monarch, we understand. At the same time, in the Void Zone, a golden dragon jade carriage flew across the sky, attracting many people's attention. However, many people's expressions changed when they felt the Sage Realm aura emitting from the golden dragon. The Sage Realm was the leader of almost all the clans and forces on the surface. After all, when one's cultivation reached the supremacy level, very few people would be distracted by mundane matters. But now, this golden dragon with the cultivation of a saint was only a beast pulling the carriage. Who is so arrogant to use a sage dragon to pull the carriage? Disaster awaits those who are arrogant. I heard that Master Ling Xiao captured Ji Ying's sworn brother in the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty and enslaved him. That guy's true form seems to be a golden dragon. You mean? His. As expected of Master Ling Xiao. How can this be called arrogant? Only such a sage dragon is worthy of the young lord's talent. Countless young sky prides looked up at the sky with reverence in their eyes. Young lord, are you saying that the armored warrior's duty is to protect the common people? In the dragon jade carriage, Yi Qingqian looked surprised. She seemed to be attracted by Ling Xiao's story. No. Ling Xiao shook his head slightly and looked at the golden pillar in the distance. In this immortal path, all living beings are fighting. The so-called protection in the eyes of the world is just a way for them to cultivate. Buddhists cultivate incense, immortals cultivate wish power, and demons cultivate slaughter. Fundamentally speaking, there is no difference. They just want to become the ruler of the world. Oh. Yi Qingqian nodded blankly, as if she didn't fully understand. Young master, can I ask you a question? Yes. If you step on the top of the world and become a great emperor, what will you do? Great emperor? Ling Xiao smiled and lowered his head to look at the outline of the ancient city below. His eyes suddenly flashed with coldness. If I become a great emperor, I will defeat all enemies in the world. Just now, he had received a message from Overlapping Shadow. It said that a young man in a black robe came all the way from the Saint Spirit Celestial Dynasty and entered the rocky cliff ancient city before him. According to Overlapping Shadow, this person's cultivation was concealed. His face was pale and he was wearing a loose black robe that did not fit him. If Ling Xiao guessed correctly, he should be Qin Chen. Previously, Ling Yuanqing had said that Qin Chen was wearing a strange armor that looked like a piece of dead wood. With such an appearance, he had the potential to be the reincarnation of the Sky Demon. It had been more than a month since he fought with Xue Xianyan in the Foliaceae. It was time to give the young sky prides of the Azure world some pressure. This was the only way to make them work harder to cultivate and face this chaotic world. What is there to say? Shout, young lord, righteous! Chirp. However, just as the barbaric demon Imperial Dragon was about to descend from the sky, a loud phoenix cry came from thousands of miles away. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. He looked up and saw the figure of an emperor in red riding a phoenix. Instantly, it attracted the attention of countless people in Rocky Cliff City. It looks like praising the Empress. Is it really praising the Empress? I didn't expect a Supreme Being's relic to attract people to praising the Empress. One of the 10 sequences of the current generation. The Empress is indeed beautiful. Look, she seems to be going for the dragon carriage? Could it be? Gulp. The Empress is clearly here for young Master Ling Xiao, all right? So, my wife is here. Ling Xiao sat in the carriage with a gentle expression. He swirled the jade cup in his hand and took a sip of wine. Why did my wife come all the way here because she missed me? Why do I remember that we just separated? Hearing this, the entire Rocky Cliff City fell into a dead silence. Wife? Husband? Is it really Master Ling Xiao? What kind of immortal couple are they? Even their mounts are so compatible. Golden Dragon and Green Phoenix, heaven and earth in harmony. But what's with this extremely sour smell? Woof 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 woof. Hearing Ling Xiao's words, Gu Chaoxiai frowned slightly. She swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth when she saw Yi Qingqian. Then, she ignored Ling Xiao and descended from the sky, landing in front of a grand immortal tower in the center of the city. Her personality hasn't changed at all. Ling Xiao shook his head and chuckled. He wasn't angry, especially when Gu Chaoxiai's providence had risen to 70,000. His eyes lit up and he couldn't help but guess. It seemed that his wife was in a good mood these days. But, Gu Chaoxiai, I haven't even used my strength, and you're already chasing after your husband. Chapter 987. Look, Master Ling Xiao and his wife are here. They are really inseparable. A Supreme Being's relic can actually attract these two immortal couples. Sigh. With the young Master and the Empress here, it seems like we won't be able to get anything this time. Yeah. Master Ling Xiao might have just been born, but he already has the potential to be in the sequence. Praising the Empress is one of the 10 sequences in Qing Tsang. With this couple, we can only follow along and get some scrap. Sighs could be heard in Rock Cliff City. Not to mention Ling Xiao, just Gu Chaoxiai alone was enough to crush 90% of the younger generation in Qing Tsang. Now that the two of them were here, who in Qing Tsang could defeat them? There were countless monsters in Qing Tsang. However, there were only 10 people in the sequence. These 10 people represented the true providence of the human race in Qing Tsang. It was rumored that those who could be in the sequence had the opportunity to become an emperor. Gu Chaoxiai was one of the 10 sequences in Qing Tsang. Even though her cultivation level had dropped and her providence had been lost, her strength was still at the top of her peers. Although Ling Xiao was not in the sequence, he had injured the Sky Demon, battled the 3 sages, and single-handedly defeated the 4 Ji-ing siblings. His strength had long been recognized by the 10,000 regions. As long as he did not die, he would definitely reach the top of the 10 sequences in the future. Master Ling Xiao. Just as Ling Xiao waved his hand to signal the brute devil to land, several figures suddenly walked out of the city and bowed to him. I am the Lord of Rock Cliff City, Yabai. When I heard that the young master was here, I specially arranged a banquet at the Yunyan Pavilion and invited a few ancient clan young masters to welcome you. One of the yellow-robed elders bowed. Even the youths beside him did not dare to look directly at Ling Xiao's face. Thank you, Ling Xiao said indifferently. He stepped out and landed in the city with Yi Qinchan. Welcome, young master. Countless young men and women had already gathered in front of the Yunyan Pavilion. Among them, there was no lack of descendants of large clans and sacred sons of immortal sections. However, in front of Ling Xiao, these people did not dare to show the slightest trace of arrogance. Even the immortal second generation, who loved to show off, showed reverence in their eyes. They were ready to turn into licking dogs at any time. Ling Xiao gently nodded and swept his gaze over everyone. That's right, it was Z. In the eyes of the crowd, this action was extremely consistent with the rumors. Although Master Ling Xiao was the most respected successor of the ancient clan in the Azure Sky realm, he had a gentle personality. He was very clear about his likes and dislikes, and he was very righteous. Otherwise, as you can see, even praising the Empress was not this polite and did not even look at these extras. However, Master Ling Xiao looked at them one by one and smiled. Of course, if the crowd knew what Ling Xiao was really thinking at this moment, they would probably spit out their blood essence on the spot. When Ling Xiao's eyes stopped on a black-robed young man, the smile on his face became even wider. That's right, he was looking for leaks. 6th stage Exalted Realm, 9,000 Providence Point. Moreover, Ling Xiao sensed an aura from him that he had not seen in a long time. The aura of the Immortal Source. Ling Xiao did not know much about the Immortal Source. After all, he had only interacted with Yizhan from the Immortal Clan. However, since it could become a symbol of the mandate of heaven, it was very precious. Regardless of its use, it was not wrong to snatch it. Seeing the smile in Ling Xiao's eyes, Qin Chen was obviously stunned. Then, he unconsciously showed some respect. Who is this young man? His head is small and his body is big. He looks like a tortoise. This idiot is too rude. Shouldn't you kneel down and kowtow when the young master looks at you? Everyone followed Ling Zhao's line of sight and focused their gazes on Qin Chen, their faces filled with disdain. Qin Chen's face darkened when he heard that. However, he did not dare to show any hostility to Ling Xiao in front of so many people. He had only heard rumors about the strength of the young master of the Ling people. However, Gu Chaoxiai was one of the 10 sequences of Qing Tsang. Even he did not have much confidence in defeating her in one battle. Wait a little longer. Haha, Master Ling Xiao, please. The 100 Cliff City Lord bowed slightly and welcomed Ling Xiao and Yi Qinchan into the pavilion. Behind them was the brute devil in his golden heavy armor. Just his height alone was enough to give people endless pressure. Now that Xiong Huan was in seclusion, the brute devil perfectly took over his duties. Everyone followed behind Ling Xiao and walked into the pavilion in a grandiose manner. At this time, the pavilion was already filled with banquet. Young master, there are still a few geniuses from the ancient clans and celestial sects on the way. Why don't we sit down first and listen to the famous songs of Cliff City? Yabai's expression was respectful as he welcomed Ling Xiao to the main seat. However, at that moment, a young lady suddenly walked out from the crowd and smiled sweetly. Haha, this is the first time young master has come to the Nihility region. Perhaps you don't know the rules of the Nihility Dao sect. Only the master sits here. Young master is a guest from afar and should sit at the guest seat. Hearing this, the Cliff City Lord was stunned. He turned his head and saw that the woman was wearing a blue dress. She looked otherworldly. Fear flashed in his eyes. So it's Miss Lan Yu. This lady was called Qi Lan Yu. She was a genius of the Nihility Dao sect and the granddaughter of the Dao sect's great elder, Qi Tianxing. She was a 4th-grade Venerable Realm cultivator and a genius. She was the leader of the Void Dao sect during this trip to the Sovereign Ruins. However, this tiny Cliff City's governor didn't even spare her a glance. Instead, he followed Ling Xiao like a slave. In the end, if it wasn't for Ling Xiao's personal arrival, no one would dare to covet the Supreme Ruins. The Nihility Dao sect had a deep foundation. Although it wasn't the best in the Northwest, it could be considered first class. Even if there were some reckless mountain forces that dared to fight for the treasure, Qi Lan Yu wouldn't put them in her eyes. However, the moment Ling Xiao and Gu Chaoxiai arrived, they stole all of Qi Lan Yu's limelight. How could she not be angry? Presumptuous! Brute Devil shouted angrily as his domineering aura fell. Qi Lan Yu's pretty face immediately changed. She staggered and fell to the ground. At this moment, there was a flash of surprise in her eyes. She didn't expect that a follower behind Ling Xiao would have such a terrifying aura. However, just as Brute Devil took a step forward and was about to kill Qi Lan Yu, the Cliff City Lord knelt down in front of Ling Xiao with a panicked expression. Young master, please calm down. Miss Lan Yu doesn't have any ill intentions. She's just afraid of neglecting young master. What a joke. He, Yabai, was just a plaything. Whether it was Ling Xiao or the Nihility Dao sect, they could easily crush him to death. And if Qi Lan Yu were to die in Cliff City today, the Nihility Dao sect would definitely vent their anger on him. Miss Lan Yu, am I right? Yabai turned his head and hurriedly gave Qi Lan Yu a look. The latter immediately understood and hurriedly bowed her head. Young master, please calm down. It's fine. Ling Xiao smiled warmly and turned to glare at Brute Devil. This servant of mine doesn't know etiquette. Ah man, how many times have I said it? Don't bully others unless someone doesn't know life from death. Yes, master. Man Huang lowered his head in fear. In the corner of the pavilion, Gu Chaoxiai coldly snorted and took a sip of the tea in her cup. Chapter 988. Thank you, young master. Qi Lan Yue gritted her teeth. Although she was furious, her face was filled with gratitude. She slowly got up and retreated to the side, not daring to complain anymore. Ling Xiao walked to Gu Chaoxiai's side and sat down beside her. My wife, you didn't come all the way from the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty just to have a cup of tea and see your husband, right? Ling Xiao smiled playfully. Gu Chaoxiai's luck was even more terrifying than Xue Xian's, the young master of the Realm Lord Palace. According to Ling Xiao's guess, there must be some secrets about her background. Even the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty's decline and gradual destruction might be the real opportunity for the Empress of the immortal Phoenix ancient dynasty to awaken. After all, a woman of destiny had to go through many hardships to reach her strongest state. If you can come, why can't I? Gu Chaoxiai looked up and glanced at Ling Xiao. The hatred that was about to come out of her mouth suddenly froze. Especially the warmth in the young man's eyes, it made her heart tremble. Haha, my wife, if you like the creation of the Supreme Being's remains, I can just snatch it and send it to you. Why do you have to work so hard? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. It seemed like he hadn't experienced the joy of dual cultivation for a long time with the chaotic spiritual divine body. Although Ling Xiao had obtained a dual cultivation technique from the system, a technique was a technique. How could it be compared to an innate dual cultivation body? Ling Xiao. Gu Chaoxiai suddenly looked up and her eyes trembled. Based on her understanding of the reincarnation of the Sky Demon, he wouldn't be so kind as to help her find a creation. Gu Chaoxiai wasn't doubting his sincerity. It was just that this guy had always done things for his own benefit. Even after merging with Nian Qingyun's memory, with Gu Chaoxiai's experience and vision, how could she not see through Ling Xiao's schemes? To put it simply, Ling Xiao was the kind of person who would eat you up if you weren't careful. Otherwise, as the Sky Demon, he was destined to be the enemy of the entire world, yet the entire Azure Sky realm praised his good name. The young master was like jade, unparalleled in the world. But if others knew his true identity, what kind of expression would they have? Sometimes, Gu Chaoxiai even suspected that he had been trying to get close to her since the lower bound. However, even someone as scheming as Ling Xiao did not know that she had already discovered his greatest secret. Put away your hypocrisy. Gu Chaoxiai's voice was cold, and his face had returned to its usual indifference. Even if she did come to help Ling Xiao fight for the creation, she still couldn't say such words. Gu Chaoxiai, you must remember that you are helping him for the child, not because you like him. Wife, you don't believe me? Then I'm really sad. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, but there was no trace of emotion on his face. Gu Chaoxiai, are you forcing me to fall in love with you? Pfft, this Qi Lanyue actually dared to show off in front of Lord Ling Xiao. This time, she didn't manage to show off and completely lost the face of the nothingness Dao sect. That's right. Fortunately, Master Ling Xiao is open-minded. Otherwise, even if he killed you, what could you do? In the Yunyan Pavilion, everyone looked at the ashen-faced Qi Lanyue and mocked her coldly. Hearing this, the Dao sect's genius's face became even gloomier. Immediately, she took out a voice transmission talisman from her Qiankuan bag and sent a message with her divine soul. Grandfather, Ling Xiao is too arrogant. Not only did he want to snatch the creation of the nothingness Dao sect, he also humiliated me in front of everyone. If you don't come, the Dao sect's face will be trampled clean by him. On the other side of the voice transmission talisman, there was a long silence. Then, a low voice suddenly resounded. Where are you? I'm in Rock Cliff City, in the Yunyan Pavilion. Ling Xiao is also here. Qi Lanyue's eyes flashed with joy, and her originally gloomy face glowed with radiance. Boom! At this moment, outside the Yunyan Pavilion, a spiritual aura suddenly descended. Then, a white-clothed figure slowly walked over. Around him, layers of starlight bloomed, mysterious and mysterious, covering all directions. Especially his pair of eyes, which were like two large stars. When he opened and closed them, millions of divine lights bloomed, causing people to not dare to look directly at him. It's the longevity Lin family's genius. Lin Shen, one of the top 100 geniuses of the Qing Song continent, the owner of the sacred star body. I didn't expect him to come too. Many disciples of the ancient families and successors of the immortal sects cried out in surprise. In the Qing Song ancient clan, those who could be called longevity were all ancient clans with supreme foundations and had a heritage of 100,000 years or more. The longevity Lin family was a terrifying clan that was second to none in the northwest of the Qing Song continent. Its heritage was even more profound than the nothingness Tao sect. On the path of cultivation, one's foundation and strength were mostly accumulated over time. As for Lin Shen, even in the Lin family, he was famous for his fighting prowess and had the potential to dominate his generation. Ling Zhao's eyes were calm as he turned to look at the white-clothed young man. However, there seemed to be starlight blooming around him, which evolved into endless mysteries. 6,000 providence points, 5th grade exalted realm, sacred star body, and star law. Not bad, it's another leak that's growing well. At that moment, Lin Shen only glanced at Ling Xiao indifferently and nodded slightly. He then turned and walked to the side to sit with Qin Chen. Sure enough, the destined one was always inexplicably attractive. One after another, a few successors of the ancient sects appeared in the Yunyan pavilion. However, there were no destined ones among them. Most of them were ordinary geniuses, so they didn't attract Ling Zhao's attention. Of course, the first thing they did when they arrived was to greet Ling Xiao and compliment him before daring to sit down. Lin Shen's strength is unfathomable. The sacred star body is said to be immortal and uses the power of the stars to temper his body. Gu Chaoci held a teacup and seemed to be talking to herself. However, what she said made Ling Xiao smile. This woman was cold by nature, but not heartless. She was obviously worried, but she didn't know how to express it. "My wife, are you worried about me?" "I'm just worried that some people are too conceited and die too ugly, which will cause me to lose face." Gu Chaoci snorted and didn't even look at Ling Xiao. "My wife, didn't you say that before we were married, we had nothing to do with each other? Why are you implicated now?" Ling Xiao smiled indifferently. Gu Chaoci gritted her teeth and didn't say another word. Since everyone is here, I'll say a few words." The Rocky Cliff City Lord stood up and looked at Ling Xiao. After getting the latter's signal, he walked to the front of the pavilion and said loudly, "Boom!" However, the moment he finished speaking, a vast divine power suddenly descended from the sky. Then, an old man in a dark green robe descended from the sky. His expression was extremely gloomy. "It's Qi Tianxing Elder." Seeing the arrival of the old man, everyone's expression changed. Only Qi Lanyue seemed to have a faint smile on her face. "Grandfather, you're finally here." Chapter 989. "Grandpa, I'm here." Qi Lanyue looked excited. She got up and walked towards the old man in Taoist robes. She was already imagining how she would embarrass Ling Xiao later. Also, Yabai had to be killed. How dare a lowly slave scold her? At this moment, many young prodigies in the misty cloud pavilion had fear on their faces. Especially those ancient clan disciples who ridiculed Qi Lanyue just now. They even forcibly stuffed their heads into the crotch of their pants, afraid that this saint stage expert of the nothingness Tao sect would implicate them in his anger. Qi Tianxing was a 7th-level Saint Realm expert and the great elder of the Void Tao sect. He was also famous in the northwest of the Azure continent. At the same time, the great elder doted on his grandson, Qi Lanyue. He had been holding her in his palms since she was young, afraid that she would be wronged. Of course, this also indirectly led to Qi Lanyue's arrogant and unbridled character. Master Ling Zhao's background was indeed heaven-defying, but the Void Tao sect was not weak either. Right now, they were in the Void Zone, the territory of the Dao sect. Qi Tianxing would never dare to kill Ling Xiao. But today, Master Ling Xiao would have to lower his head and apologize. After all, the immortal battle had not happened for 100,000 years. Ling people were powerful, but they would not declare war on the Void Dao sect for such a small matter. Great Elder! Yabai's lips trembled and cold sweat appeared on his forehead. With this Dao sect Grand Elder's personality, he would most likely stand up for Qi Lanyue when she was humiliated. But today, if Master Ling Xiao was humiliated in Rock Cliff City, do you think the Ling people would slaughter everyone in the city? Master, standing behind Ling Xiao, Brute Devil's eyes suddenly turned blood-red. But at this moment, Yi Qingchan and Gu Chao Ci did not show any emotion on their faces. Grandpa! It's him, Ling Xiao. He humiliated me just now. Hurry up and teach him a lesson. Qi Lanyue pointed at Ling Xiao proudly. However, just as she finished her words, she felt a sharp pain in her arm. Then, everyone was stunned to see that Qi Lanyue's entire right arm was cut off from her shoulder. Blood spurted out, and the young girl's face suddenly paled. Then, a cry of pain and despair resounded through the entire Yunyan pavilion. Ah! At this moment, everyone in the pavilion was in a state of confusion. Didn't Qi Tianxing come to Rock Cliff City to help Qi Lanyue? Only Ling Xiao remained calm. He lowered his head and sipped his tea. He didn't care about the disturbance in front of the hall at all. With the level of his divine soul, how could he not feel Qi Lanyue's little movements? But in front of so many people, as the light of the righteous path, I can't just casually kill people. But I, Ling Xiao, am proficient in divination, especially tarot cards. With a glance, this Qi Lanyue's glabella is dark. She is destined to be unlucky tonight. Of course, even if the people from the Nihility Dao Palace came, not to mention the Sky Sovereign puppet in Ling Zhao's hand, Gui Ying, Mount Ray, and the others, how could a great elder of the Nihility Dao Palace fight against them? But now, it seems that Qi Tianxing was decisive. His sword had temporarily saved Qi Lanyue's life. Ignorant fool, do you think Master Ling Xiao is someone you can casually instruct? Kneel down! Qi Tianxing shouted coldly. His face was extremely gloomy and cold. That's right, from the moment Qi Lanyue sent him the letter, he had already thought of completely abandoning this granddaughter of his. Taigu Ling people, to any expert above the Saint Realm in the Azure World, was a taboo. When Master Ling Xiao was born, Ling people dared to use the blood of a Sky Sovereign as a taboo. This Qi Lanyue's brain was damaged. She actually dared to disrespect him? Grandfather. Qi Lanyue was at a loss and her face was pale. Losing an arm was not a serious injury to a cultivator. As long as they used some spiritual materials and secret treasures, the arm could be regrown. However, today's humiliation was too big of a blow to Qi Lanyue. Her Dao heart was probably going to collapse because of this. Kneel down now. Qi Tianxing slapped Qi Lanyue's face. His Saint Realm aura was released, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Plop! Qi Lanyue staggered and kneeled on the ground. Blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Young master, it's my fault for spoiling her. If she has offended you, I will apologize on her behalf. Qi Tianxing walked to Ling Zhao's side and bowed. His tone was humble, and there was no trace of the dignity of a Saint Realm expert. Ling Xiao nodded and sipped the tea in his cup. Seeing this, Qi Tianxing's eyes narrowed. A spiritual light flashed in his hand, and a pair of bronze bells suddenly appeared. I heard that young master and the Empress are both here. Although this pair of bells is not a treasure, it is still a peerless emperor weapon. Take it as a gift from Qi Tianxing. Oh! Hearing this, Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows and a touch of gentleness appeared on his face. Wife, what do you think? Gu Chao Ci looked coldly at Ling Xiao. Just as she was about to refuse, she saw the miserable look on Qi Lan Yu's face and sighed. Elder Qi, thank you. After saying this, she stretched out her hand and took the pair of emperor bells. Although her face was cold, it made Qi Tianxing feel relieved. His eyes were filled with gratitude. With Ling Zhao's personality, if Gu Chaoxiai said something in a fit of pique, Qi Lan Yu would be gone. Although this girl's personality was domineering, in Gu Chaoxiai's opinion, she did not deserve to die. Haha, Elder Qi, you should spend more effort to discipline the younger generation. Today you met me. If it was someone else, it would not be so easy to escape. Ling Zhao's tone was calm and gentle, but his words made Qi Tianxing's heart tremble. Young master, you are right. I will follow your instructions in the future. Then, he grabbed Qi Lanyue and disappeared from the misty cloud pavilion as if he was escaping. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, looked at Gu Chaozi meaningfully with a teasing smile. Being stared at like this, Gu Chaozi's eyes flashed with a touch of annoyance. She threw the pair of bronze bells in front of him without saying anything. Wife, you don't want it anymore? I thought you really liked it. Ah man, go and call Elder Qi back. You! Gu Chaozi gritted her teeth, but no matter how angry she was, she did not know how to vent it. Since the Xingzhou continent, she found that all her thoughts seemed to be easily controlled by Ling Xiao. Even now, she had the cultivation of a demi-saint, but in front of this young man, she could not resist at all. Haha, such beautiful bells, of course, I have to carry them with me. Ling Xiao smiled, took out a green bell and tied it to his waist, and pushed the other one in front of Gu Chaozi. Yes, if it was not for Gu Chaozi, Qi Lan Yu would have died today. But from the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao knew that although the Empress of the Celestial Dynasty looked cold, she was loyal and kind in her heart. How could such a woman escape from Ling Zhao's palm? You can't refuse what I give you, and you can't take what I don't give you. Chapter 990. Haha, young master and the Empress are really in love. Everyone is envious. The city lord of Rock Cliff City wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and smiled humbly. City lord, what did you want to say? Ling Xiao glanced at Qin Chen and Lin Shen in the corner. The two of them didn't have any interaction at all. They were just drinking tea by themselves. It was a strange scene. Oh, nothing much. Master Ling Xiao, why don't you say a few words to everyone? After this incident, the city lord of Rock Cliff City's Dao heart was almost shattered. He originally wanted to put on a show in front of all the prodigies, but he didn't have the mood to do so now. Hurry up and leave. Young Master Ling Xiao had to leave as soon as possible. That was all he hoped for. The Supreme Being's relic is about to appear. I didn't come here just for the treasures inside. That day the Sky Demon, hiss, hiss, hiss. When they heard the words Sky Demon, many of the prodigies' faces changed. Fear flashed in their eyes. Only Qin Chen and Lin Shen's eyes remained calm, without a trace of emotion. That day, the Sky Demon appeared in the Foliaceae and stole the Supreme Being's remains. Therefore, I guess that the Supreme Being's remains might be the key to his cultivation. This time, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before Ling Xiao could finish his sentence, some prodigies in the Yunyan Pavilion had already stood up and fled into the distance. F***ck. I just wanted to find a treasure. Now that Master Ling Xiao and Praising the Empress are both here, I probably can't find the treasure anymore. Now you're telling me that the Sky Demon might be here too? Why the F***ck am I looking for? Time to run. Young Master, do you mean that the demon might appear in the Supreme Being's relic? An ancient race prodigy asked with a serious expression. It's not that he might appear in the relic. He could be any one of us. Just as Ling Xiao finished speaking, a commotion broke out in the Yunyan Pavilion. Only Gu Chaozi and Yi Qingchan lowered their heads and sipped their tea. This. Young Master, you once fought against that demon with young Master Shui. I wonder if you can tell us the characteristics of this demon so that we can be more careful. Young man, venerable realm, tall and slender, terrifying combat strength, able to kill saints. Ling Zhao's tone was solemn as he swept his gaze across the people in the pavilion. Of course, this devil was severely injured by me and young Master Shui. Even if he shows himself, he won't dare to be too arrogant. Since I'm here, I won't allow him to hurt anyone. If anyone notices anything unusual, please inform me immediately. No matter when or where, I, Ling Xiao, will not shirk my responsibility. Young Master! Righteousness! Instantly, the pavilion of Yunyan was filled with exclamations and cheers. As for Ling Xiao, they had only heard rumors that the successor of the Ling people was a righteous person. However, after seeing him today, the rumors were far from his charm. Hearing everyone's praises, Ling Zhao's expression was gentle and even a little humble. He sighed helplessly. This is a battle that cultivators should fight and defend. I hope that everyone will work together with me to slay this demon as soon as possible. Young Master, don't worry. We will do our best to help you. All the prodigies responded in unison. They seemed to have been infected by Ling Zhao's righteousness and had forgotten how terrifying the Nine Heavens taboo was. Seeing this, Ling Zhao's smile became even gentler, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Naturally, someone had to take the blame for the sky demon. Only then could he truly hide behind the scenes and plot against the world. The one who killed was the sky demon. What did it have to do with Ling Xiao? F***ck. Bah, hypocrite! In the corner of the pavilion, Qin Chen's expression was furious as he snorted in his heart. As if sensing the coldness exuding from him, Lin Shen raised his eyebrows and looked at him meaningfully. Fellow cultivator, are you also here to fight for the supreme creation? Yes. Qin Chen's voice was low, as if he was wary of Lin Shen's curiosity. Now that young Master Ling and praising the Empress have come together, I'm afraid we don't have many chances. Lin Shen smiled faintly, as if waiting for Qin Chen to give him an answer. Yes, the Taigu Ling people did have a deep foundation. However, the competition between peers was a form of training and would never involve the forces behind them. This black-robed youth had a fluctuation that made him shudder. If the two of them could work together, they might have some unexpected gains. However, Qin Chen only replied with one word and did not say anything else. Fellow cultivator, don't you have any other ideas? What does it have to do with you? Qin Chen frowned. His face, which was already disguised, had a trace of anger. He did not come to Rock Cliff City for the supreme creation at all. He wanted Ling Xiao and Gu Chaoxiai to pay the price. Other than that, he wanted nothing else. You! Lin Shen's eyes narrowed and his face darkened. What arrogance! May I know which clan you are from? Noisy! Qin Chen snorted coldly and walked out of the pavilion. Seeing this, the various geniuses in the Yunyan pavilion were shocked. Seeing Lin Shen's ashen face, they immediately had some guesses. Who is this youth? How dare he speak to young Master Lin Shen like that? I don't know. He's probably not very smart. In the distance, Ling Xiao looked at the figure walking out of the pavilion with a smile in his eyes. At this moment, he was not worried that this leak would leave Rock Cliff City. Since his target was him, if he did not leave, he would definitely not leave. He would most likely hide in the city and wait for an opportunity. Layered Shadow was outside the pavilion. With her secretly following, Qin Chen would not be able to escape. However, Lin Shen had unknowingly done Ling Xiao a huge favor. Therefore, Ling Xiao decided to give him a supreme creation. Gu Chaoxiai. Is Gu Chaoxiai here? Just as everyone was drinking and the banquet was about to begin, a loud shout came from outside the pavilion. A burly figure walked in from outside the pavilion. He walked like a tiger and a dragon, looking valiant. There was a faint blood chi above his head. The divine sun surged like a divine figure standing between heaven and earth. It's Sure Haotian from the Longevity Sure family. I didn't expect him to come too. Seeing who it was, everyone's expression changed. This monstrous talent of the ancient family was famous for being rude and unreasonable in the Azure world. Moreover, it was said that he had inherited the bloodline of an ancestor of the Sure family, the Chunyo divine bloodline. He was born with great strength and could shake the saint realm. Those who fought with him were all shocked by his divine power. Gradually, Sure Haotian gained the title of being invincible. Of course, what made the younger generation of the Azure world more familiar was not only his terrifying combat strength, but also his identity as Gu Chaoxiai's #1 admirer. It was said that Sure Haotian once said that if anyone dared to pursue Gu Chaoxiai, he would tear them apart and crush them into pieces. Now, it seemed that there would be a good show to watch. Ling Zhao's eyes were cold. He looked at Gu Chaoxiai gently. Wife, your friend? The Longevity Sure family was the top ancient family in the Azure world. This family's foundation could be traced back to the Fiend God era. There were many ancestors in this family, and each of them was amazing. However, many of them were missing now, which made the Sure family's deterrence far less terrifying than before. However, no matter what, there was no force in the Azure world that dared to underestimate the Sure family. Compared to other longevity families, the Sure family was even more outstanding and stood at the top. After all, no one knew whether those powerful ancestors of the Sure family had fallen or not. Chapter 991. I don't have any friends. Gu Chaoxiai's face was cold and her eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Although Sure Haotian was an evildoer of the Azure continent, he was rude and arrogant, which was annoying. However, Gu Chaoxiai had never taught him a lesson because, with him around, the flies from the other ancient sects and clans would stay away from her. This saved Gu Chaoxiai a lot of trouble. Haha, if that's the case, I won't be polite. Ling Xiao smiled gently. Since he wasn't Gu Chaoxiai's friend, he would beat him half to death and leave him alive. This way, everyone who saw him would remember today's lesson. However, if he was Gu Chaoxiai's friend, Sure Haotian wouldn't be able to walk out of the Union Pavilion today. Ling Xiao, the Longevity Sure family, is different from the other ancient clans. It is said that the ancestors of the Sure family are not in this world. You better not be too arrogant. Gu Chaoxiai's voice was cold. Even her face was indifferent. However, when Ling Xiao heard these words, there was a hint of concern. Wife, are you worried about me again? Think what you want. Gu Chaoxiai snorted coldly. She lowered her head and sipped her tea. Her fine black hair flowed down, making her look even more stunning. Ha, Gu Chaoxiai, I heard that you were here. I rushed over as soon as I came out of seclusion. Why didn't you look at me? Sure Haotian was 9 feet tall. He was a head taller than Ling Xiao. His sturdy body gave off an indescribable pressure. At this moment, the entire Union Pavilion was silent. Everyone's eyes were wandering between Ling Xiao and Sure Haotian. When Ling Xiao killed Jiying that day, the entire Azure continent was shaken. Those who admired Gu Chaoxiai were disheartened and didn't dare to be greedy anymore. Only Sure Haotian had a domineering personality. He was the only one who dared to be so arrogant and show his affection for praising the Empress in front of Ling Xiao. You are Ling Xiao, right? You did well. Emir Jiying dares to marry Gu Chaoxiai. You are really courting death. The Gu family must have lost their minds to actually agree to it. If I wasn't in seclusion for 10 years, I would have killed my way to the Saint Spirit dynasty and personally crushed Jiying. Seeing that Gu Chaoxi was ignoring him, Sure Haotian turned to look at Ling Xiao with a look of admiration. Ling Xiao had a playful look in his eyes. Sure Haotian's cultivation was the same as Jiying's. They were both at the 6th level of the Venerable Realm. However, this person didn't have any luck. Even if he fought with Jiying, he would have a slim chance of survival. However, according to Ling Zhao's knowledge, there were many monsters in the younger generation of the Shi family. Shi Haotian's personality was domineering, and he was never willing to submit to the heavens. The disciples of ordinary families were afraid of the Shi family's foundation, and most of them didn't dare to hurt him. That was why he was called invincible. It was just that such a person was completely useless in front of Ling Xiao. You are not bad. But if you want to marry Gu Chaoxi, you have to get my permission. Shi Haotian snorted coldly, and the battle intent in his eyes intensified. I don't care which family you are. Today you and I will fight. Only the winner has the right to have Gu Chaoxi. Impudent! The barbaric devil roared angrily, and a ferocious aura rippled around him. Shi Haotian's originally muscular body instantly became small and pitiful in front of the barbaric devil. What's wrong, Ling Xiao? I heard that you are at the peak of the current generation and are invincible. Are you afraid? Shi Haotian was fearless. Golden light shone around his body and turned into a divine shadow that suppressed everything. My talent is mediocre, but not just anyone can provoke me. Gu Chaoxi is my fiancée, and not just anyone can think about her. Ling Xiao put down the teacup in his hand and slowly got up. Endless avatars began to rise around his body. There were gales, lightning, divine trees, and ancient monsters. The sound of the great Tao shook people's hearts and spread for thousands of miles. In particular, there was a vertical mark between his eyebrows. It was like the eye of an immortal god. Once it opened, it would be the end of the world. Such a commotion instantly made the expressions of many ancient race monsters change. As expected of the young master of the Ling people. In terms of aura alone, Shi Haotian couldn't compare to him. Even Qin Chen, who was about to leave, turned back and quietly stood outside the pavilion, looking at the two figures confronting each other. That's right. Everyone present had heard that Ling Zhao's combat power was unparalleled and that he had the talent to dominate a generation. It was possible that those who were called monstrous geniuses all had some pride in their hearts. They also wanted to see for themselves whether this master Ling Xiao lived up to his name or was just a facade. You're just a nobody? How arrogant of you! I, Shi Haotian, have been in the Azure continent for 300 years, and I've never seen such an arrogant young man like you. Shi Haotian was stunned. He didn't expect that Ling Xiao, who looked weak and gentle, would be so domineering. You'll see it today. Ling Xiao smiled gently, but Shi Haotian could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and threw out a punch. Above the shadow of the fist, golden light bloomed. Layer upon layer, it turned into a ferocious beast that rushed towards Ling Zhao's chest. The void trembled as if it couldn't handle the power of this punch. It instantly shattered into pieces. Everyone's expression changed greatly. They didn't expect Shi Haotian to use his full strength. Young master. Yi Qingchan's expression changed. Although she didn't believe that Shi Haotian could kill Ling Xiao, she was afraid that Ling Xiao wouldn't be able to react in time. Her beautiful eyes flashed with panic. Boom! The entire Yunyan pavilion quietly shattered. All the ancient race geniuses were shocked and kept quiet out of fear. Shi Haotian's physical combat power was unrivaled among the younger generation of the human race. Over the years, there were at least 80 ancient race monsters who died under his fists, if not 1,000. Every single one of them was extraordinary. Especially at this moment, the shadow of the fist contained the power of the ancients. It was as if an emperor had stepped through time and space, causing everyone to feel fear. It's over. Master Ling Xiao just said that he would lead us to ambush the Sky Demon. Don't tell me he's going to be killed by Shi Haotian now? Great! Outside the Yunyan pavilion, Qin Chen clenched his fists in excitement. His eyes flashed with excitement. He had naturally heard of Shi Haotian's name. The mighty Shi Haotian was now using his full strength. Even if he couldn't kill Ling Xiao, he would definitely injure him severely. Therefore, he hid behind the scenes and waited for an opportunity to kill him. He was simply too lucky. Kid, don't be happy too early. That young Master Ling people is not ordinary. However, at this moment, Hiromu of Goguryeo suddenly spoke. There was a hint of undisguised seriousness in his voice. For some reason, ever since he felt Ling Xiao's aura, he felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. This uneasiness had nothing to do with cultivation. It was as if he was facing a natural enemy. Vaguely, this immortal king actually had some thoughts of retreating. The Fu Sang divine tree was said to be at the peak of the 9 heavens. It had the strongest vitality and defensive power. However, inexplicably, Hiromu of Goguryeo felt that this trip to the supreme secret realm wouldn't be too smooth. Chapter 992. The Pinnacle of Life, Fu Sang. The root of heaven and earth, the fruit of immortality. One branch could spread 9,000 realms, one leaf could cover 10,000 years of light. This ancient Fu Sang tree was originally a true spirit of the 9 heavens. Just this power alone was something that no one in the extraordinary region could contend against. Back then, Hiromu of Goguryeo had fought against the heavens and earth, and fought against tens of thousands of creatures. He had fought tens of thousands of battles, and his achievements were illustrious. Even people of the same level as him had died in his hand. It was because of this Fu Sang battlesuit that he was wearing. No matter how serious the injury was, this armor could heal. It was almost indestructible. But today, when he saw Ling Xiao, even with Hiromu of Goguryeo's temperament, he felt a faint trace of fear. It was as if this human youth hid a terrifying secret that was no weaker than the Fu Sang battlesuit. Extraordinary! Qin Chen's eyes narrowed. Whether Hiromu of Goguryeo was bragging or not, he had already seen the power of this battlesuit. Since Ling Xiao was able to make him feel apprehensive, perhaps Ling Xiao was truly extraordinary. With our current fusion level, what are the chances of winning against him? Qin Chen's tone was low. The excitement on his face had long disappeared. 80%. With Hiromu of Goguryeo's strength, at his peak, he could crush the entire ordinary region. This 80% chance was already a great acknowledgement of Ling Xiao. What if we fight against Gu Chaoci? Qin Chen muttered to himself. Compared to Ling Xiao, his hatred for Gu Chaoci was no less. If it weren't for this woman, his brothers wouldn't have provoked Ling Xiao for no reason. Moreover, Ling Xiao had killed Ji Hanyu. He hoped that before he killed him, he would let him understand the pain of losing a loved one. That woman's aura is also somewhat mysterious. There is a natural law of the great Tao: you are an immortal king. You can't even deal with 2 supremes? Could it be that you've been bragging to me all this while? Before Hiromu of Goguryeo could finish speaking, Qin Chen had already gritted his teeth and interrupted. What the hell? An immortal king who looked down on the ordinary realm was actually so afraid of killing 2 exalted realm cultivators. Do you think I'm counting on you to bring me to the top of the world? Humph. If this immortal king still had 10% of his strength when he was alive, this insignificant mortal realm could be destroyed with a wave of his hand. I have full confidence in killing that woman. Hiromu of Goguryeo was obviously a little angry. According to his character, he was never one to leave no room for negotiation. In particular, the strand of chaotic opportunity on Gu Chaoci's body surprised him. It was impossible for such a monster to not have some life-saving trump cards. But what can I do? If I don't act tough now, I'm afraid that Qin Chen's Tao heart will collapse. Good. Then I'll kill the Empress first, then Ling Xiao. Qin Chen took a deep breath, and his eyes became even colder. A trace of demonic intent rose and fell around his body, making him look rather sinister. Boom. At this moment, the golden radiance in the Yunyan pavilion finally dissipated. Immediately after, Everyone was stunned to see that one of Shi Haotian's fists was actually grasped by Ling Xiao. Especially that slender and fair palm. It looked weak and powerless, but it inexplicably carried a bit of shock. Ling Xiao's expression was calm, and his black clothes fluttered. He just stood there, but he looked like an ancient immortal that had descended, and he carried a carefree and otherworldly aura. How is this possible? The corners of Shi Haotian's brows trembled slightly. That punch just now was already the limit of his physical body. He was confident that even a 9th-level exalted realm cultivator wouldn't be unharmed under that punch. However, at this moment, when he felt the terrifying power contained in Ling Xiao's palm, Shi Haotian only felt a deep fear from the bottom of his heart. "Gu Chao Ci is my woman." Ling Xiao opened his mouth and said in an extremely calm tone. Then, under everyone's incredulous gazes, he suddenly exerted force in his palm and ruthlessly tore off one of Shi Haotian's arms. Poof! As blood spurted out, it instantly splattered on the faces of the surrounding sky prides. A look of pain also appeared on Shi Haotian's face. He staggered and retreated a few feet away. However, although there was shock on his face, he didn't have any intention of retreating. That's right. That punch just now was the limit of his physical body, but it wasn't his trump card. Ling Xiao's physical body had obviously surpassed the limit of the exalted realm, but that wasn't enough to make him fall into despair. Plop! Ling Xiao casually threw the severed arm to the side, and his expression was gentle. "Whoever dares to think about my woman will have to die." The entire Yunyan pavilion was silent. At this moment, everyone was looking at the peerless figure in black with respect in their eyes. Domineering, decisive, tyrannical. Which woman in the world could resist such a young master? Moreover, he was a young master with a heaven-defying appearance and a peerless background. "I can't take it anymore. Master Ling Xiao, I'm going to cry for you. I'm really envious of praising the Empress. If I have such a Tao companion, even if it's just for a day, my death will be worth it. Lord Ling Xiao, my turbid eyes aren't worthy to look at you. Young master, please use more strength and let Shi Haotian know that the Azure Sky world is his grassland." A girl shouted excitedly. At this moment, she had forgotten that the person standing opposite Ling Xiao was also a monster from the Azure Sky world. Only Gu Chao Ci remained calm as she lowered her head and sipped her tea. However, the ripple in her eyes revealed the trembling in her heart. Still as domineering as before. "Ling Xiao, you're indeed very strong, but don't think that you've won." Shi Haotian took a deep breath. Spiritual light flickered where his broken arm was and sealed his bloodline. At this moment, although his face was pale, there wasn't a trace of shock. Instead, he calmed down. Seeing this, Ling Xiao sighed inwardly. This Shi family was indeed worthy of being called an everlasting family. With Shi Haotian's temperament, he was far more tenacious than the children of destiny he had seen. Of course, since the day Ling Xiao descended on the Shenwu dynasty, he had intentionally sent a message to the world. Gu Chao Ci was his weakness. As the young master of the Ling people, his actions would definitely be watched by some people with ulterior motives. If there was something in the heart, it would be a flaw. Just the luck on Gu Chao Ci's body meant that she wouldn't fall so easily. And the people of destiny had always experienced hardships in order to grow faster. As long as this woman could sincerely submit, she alone would be equivalent to 10 people of destiny. Fighting against the heavens and killing immortals, Gu Chao Ci would definitely be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ling Xiao. Moreover, this flaw was laid out in the open, while those with ulterior motives hid in the dark. However, once someone attacked Gu Chao Ci, their identities would be completely exposed. At that time, Ling Xiao would be able to get rid of them one by one. If she wasn't in danger, how could she reveal Ling Xiao's true feelings? "Today, either you die or I die," Shi Haotian shouted angrily. His figure rose into the air, as if he was bathed in golden light. Even the ancient divine figure behind him gradually solidified at this moment. It was like a dragon and a cow with two horns on its head. It was extremely strange. Moo! In the void, a loud demonic roar resounded. Its power erupted, covering the 9 heavens. Shi Haotian formed a seal with a single hand. His expression was solemn as he descended from the sky. Bloodline forbidden technique, mountain and sea prison. Chapter 993. This energy wave. All the prodigies and disciples of the major sects froze when they saw the bloody mountains and rivers falling from the sky. Just this energy wave alone was enough to make countless prodigies' hair stand on end, and despair filled their hearts. The terrifying aura instantly shattered the Yunyan pavilion, causing the void to crack. Shi Haotian's figure finally descended from the sky and arrived above Ling Zhao's head. However, there was still no change in the latter's expression. He only calmly looked at the descending mystical phenomenon. In the next moment, his body seemed to emit an immortal glow. A terrifying aura began to rise, as if an immortal had descended to the mortal realm. In fact, there was also a golden figure behind Ling Zhao. It was covered in layers of scales and had a mighty divine aura. It was like the shadow of a true dragon. What kind of technique is this? Could it be that Master Ling Zhao was born with the dragon bloodline? This pressure, countless people's expressions changed. The true dragon of the 9 heavens was the true source of providence in the eyes of all living beings. Even the emperors of the mortal realm called themselves dragons and ruled the world. As for the great power of heaven and earth that originally lingered around Shi Haotian's body, it seemed to have completely scattered the moment the dragon image appeared, disappearing without a trace. At this moment, the dragon shadow behind Ling Zhao was indeed the manifestation of the Aeon Dragon's soul. However, its aura had already undergone many changes after fusing with the immortal fate. There were no immortals in the ordinary realm now, and the only realm lord had disappeared. Therefore, Ling Zhao was not worried about being recognized. No, I don't believe it. Shi Haotian's expression was ferocious, especially when he felt the pressure from his bloodline. His calm mind was shaken again. Die. However, this time, Ling Zhao did not give him any chance. He reached out with one hand. Under his black robe, there was a dense layer of dragon scales. With the existence of the immortal demon Ancient Bell, Ling Zhao would not easily use the Sky Demon's aura. Even so, with his current strength, it was easy for him to crush a prodigy who was famous for his physical body. Boom! Everyone only saw a golden dragon claw tear through heaven and earth. It reversed the universe, overturned yin and yang, and shook the heavens and the earth. Then, it collided with Shi Haotian's palm imprint. Between heaven and earth, there was a dazzling golden radiance covering thousands of miles of wind and clouds. Countless figures scurried out of the Yunyan pavilion in a sorry state. Their faces were filled with fear. They had not expected that they would be able to witness such a terrifying battle between geniuses before the supreme secret realm had even opened. Regardless of whether it was Shi Haotian or Ling Zhao, they were both true monsters of the human race. Behind the two of them stood a terrifying great clan. Logically speaking, Shi Haotian was older than Ling Zhao by more than 300 years, so he should be the stronger party. However, the instant they saw Ling Zhao take action, they knew that today, Shi Haotian was likely going to die. Boom! Until, under the cover of the layers of smoke, a figure was thrown out of thin air. Everyone's eyes narrowed fiercely. They saw that the one who was flung out was precisely Shi Haotian. However, at this moment, the Shi clan's heaven's pride no longer had the same aura as before. His flesh and blood were crushed to pieces, and even his bones were twisted in a state that could be described as distorted as they flipped and shifted. What was even more terrifying was that Shi Haotian's elixir sea and half of his body were completely shattered. Who would have thought that Shi Haotian, who was known to have an invincible physical body, would be smashed into pieces by the Ling people's young master, Ling Xiao. Originally, everyone had only heard that the Ling people's young master, Ling Xiao, was heaven-defying in the way of the sword and unparalleled in looks. Not only did he not lose to the three saints, but he also killed Ji Ying and the other supremes with his own strength. Such a battle record could be said to be outstanding. However, rumors were just rumors. It was far from the shock of seeing it with their own eyes. Today, everyone finally understood why the Ling people, who had not had a young master for 100,000 years, welcomed Ling Xiao into the world. This was not invincibility at all. Ling Xiao's strength was enough to enter the sequence. He could be considered a taboo. Even Gu Chaoxiai, who was undefeated in the Azure continent, was not as shocking as Ling Xiao's actions today. Invincible in the way of the sword and an indestructible physical body? F***CK. Master Ling Xiao, you are mighty, majestic. I'd actually lost. Sure Haotian crawled on the ground. He no longer felt any pain. At this moment there was only despair in his eyes. City Lord 100 Cliff, please send someone to send young Master Sure back to his clan to recover. From the ruins, a black-robed figure slowly walked out. His face was gentle and his posture was straight. Especially the calmness in his eyes. It was like a vast abyss, deep and unfathomable. It was inexplicably fascinating. Send him back to his clan to recover? 100 Cliff's face trembled and he swallowed hard. This action was extremely arrogant. Crippling your clan's heaven's pride and then sending him back to recover? In the entire Azure continent, only this descendant of the Ling people would dare to be so overbearing. However, everything that happened today was due to Sure Haotian's own actions. This person was the one who provoked him first. He was arrogant and rude and coveted praising the Empress. Master Ling Xiao not killing him was already a great mercy. Thinking of this, 100 Cliff's face was filled with emotions. How could Master Ling Xiao be arrogant? This was simply righteous. Young Master. Righteous. The surrounding people were all moved, and their eyes were filled with respect and admiration as they looked at the young man's figure. Everyone, it's getting late. Let's disperse. Ling Xiao waved his hand and turned to look at Gu Chaoxiai. Wife, let me find you a place to stay. No need. Gu Chaoxiai's face trembled and she disappeared as if she was escaping. Yabai had already bowed and said, Young Master, I've already arranged for your residence. It's in a quiet courtyard in the south of the city. I know that young Master likes peace and quiet, so I specially found someone to clear a manor for you to stay in. Thank you for your trouble. Ling Xiao's expression was humble and gentle, as graceful as jade. This attitude made the surrounding ancient clan geniuses sigh inwardly. This was the light of the human race, the backbone of the righteous path. On the path to immortality, they had seen many tyrannical and arrogant geniuses who bullied others. These people either relied on their background or strength to run amok and never put others in their eyes. However, Master Ling Xiao's appearance was like a clear stream in this chaotic world. It overturned everyone's impression of the ancient clan's successor. He was cultured and refined, low-key and humble. However, he wasn't always patient. Sometimes, he was so domineering that it made people tremble. He was ruthless to his enemies, loyal to his loved ones, magnanimous to his subordinates, and righteous to the people of the world. What was there to say? I'll just blow it up. At this moment, looking at Sure Haotian, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog, even the disciples of some small aristocratic families had unconcealed contempt in their eyes. A crippled ancient clan genius was basically the end of his immortal path. This was especially true for an ancient family like the Sure family, which had existed for tens of thousands of years. In fact, the clan was even more cold. Monstrous talent blessed by the heavens. Mediocre talent, no more respect. Although Master Ling Xiao spared his dog life, Sure Haotian's future life would be worse than that of a pig or a dog. Serves him right. Chapter 994. Oh, that's right. Everyone, if you encounter any danger or suspicious people, remember to inform me at any time. Ling Xiao took a deep look at Sure Haotian on the ground. Then, he turned to the crowd and said with a gentle expression, Sure Haotian, listen to this name. Isn't he a destined one? Is it appropriate? As for why he didn't have any luck, Ling Xiao guessed that it was probably because he wasn't miserable enough. Therefore, Ling Xiao forced him to suffer a tragedy in order to help him awaken more powerful talents and opportunities. He wanted to urge him to become a destined one. Do you still think that I, Ling Xiao, am cruel? Of course, even if Sure Haotian didn't awaken any other golden fingers in the end, he was still alive. It was a kind of deterrence that Ling Xiao had for the world. Young master is really chivalrous. He is a role model for our generation. Yes, to be born in the same era as Master Ling Xiao is our sorrow and also our honor. Too small. Your vision is too small. Master Ling Xiao is the opportunity for the human race to prosper. Everyone exclaimed. However, it made Qin Chen's expression even more gloomy and sinister. If he didn't have enough understanding of Jiying, Ji Hanyu, and the others, Ling Xiao's righteousness made him feel extreme admiration. However, the more it was like this, the more fear he felt in his heart. This was a devil who truly fooled the common people and played them in the palm of his hand. Fortunately, the relationship between Gu Chaoxiai and Ling Xiao wasn't as close as he thought. Therefore, the moonless and windy night was the best time to kill. Young master, the Sure family is a little special. Although I don't know Sure Haotian, it is said that this family had an ancestor who was once the most powerful person in the human race. He was shockingly talented and dominated his generation. In the end, he disappeared without a trace. In a small courtyard in the northern part of the city, the green bamboo was lush and verdant. Ling Xiao was lying on a wooden chair and looking at the afterglow of the setting sun. Beside him, Yi Qingchan's expression was a little serious. She indeed didn't recognize Sure Haotian, but this long-life Sure family's Yi Qingchan did. It was rumored that the Sure family's ancestor was born with a bone of supremacy in his body. He should have been able to walk in the heavens and stand at the top of the world. However, this Sure family's ancestor's life was full of obstacles and difficulties. In the end, he became an emperor and dominated the entire era. Even the Sure family did not know where he was. However, his strength was well known to the entire human race. I know. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently, but there wasn't the slightest ripple on his face. How could he, the reincarnation of the Sky Demon, be afraid of an ancestor of the Sure family who had disappeared? Even if that person was modeled after the great emperor of the primordial era, Ling Xiao would not be intimidated. Young master, Sure Haotian, if the Sure family had any self-awareness, they wouldn't have made an enemy of me and the Ling people because of this. Ling Xiao stretched his muscles and got up to look at the crescent moon in the sky. It's getting dark. Young master, are you going out? Of course. Since the Supreme Secret Territory hasn't opened yet, I have to make some preparations. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and disappeared from where he stood. At the same time, in the courtyard where Gu Chaoxiai was staying, a dark shadow snuck into her room. Who is it? Gu Chaoxiai, who originally had her eyes closed, suddenly opened them. However, before she could resist, a shadow pounced on her and pressed her against the bed. Immediately after, a pair of thin lips covered her mouth, blocking the exclamation that was about to come out of her mouth. Gu Chaoxiai's beautiful eyes widened. However, when she saw the graceful face in front of her, her originally tense body inexplicably relaxed. With Ling Xiao's mastery of time and space, as well as his divine soul of the Saint Realm, even if Gu Chaoxiai was at her peak, she would not be able to sense his presence, let alone the weakened Gu Chaoxiai. Oh! Gu Chaoxiai struggled with all her might and fiercely pushed Ling Xiao away. Her beautiful face was flushed red and became even more alluring in the darkness. Wife, you didn't really come all the way here for the fortune in the Supreme Secret Territory's ruins, did you? Ling Xiao smiled. When he saw Gu Chaoxiai's embarrassed and angry look, his heart immediately heated up. It's not because of you. Gu Chaoxiai spat and tidied her hair. She waved her jade-like hand and the room immediately lit up with layers of light. So my wife has a place to stay. I was wondering why you didn't stay with me. Ling Xiao pushed open the window and looked at the elegantly decorated small courtyard. Could it be that some admirer prepared this for you? Ling People's young master is so narrow-minded. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at if word gets out? Gu Chaoxiai frowned and coldly glanced at Ling Xiao. However, she was inexplicably puzzled. The Sky Demon also had such a narrow-minded side? Joke? I'll kill whoever laughs at me. That way, no one will dare to laugh at me. Ling Xiao smiled indifferently, while Gu Chaoxiai's face revealed an expression of understanding. Gu Chaoxiai. What? Actually, you can be quite cute sometimes. Hearing this, Gu Chaoxiai was stunned and her face turned even redder. Why did you come to find me in the middle of the night? I came to find my fiancé in the middle of the night. What else could there be? Ling Xiao smiled evilly. Gu Chaoxiai had already retreated to the side with a guarded expression. Ling Xiao, I advise you. If we fight, you may not be my match. Is that so? Wife, what do you think I've been doing for the past 3 years? Ling Xiao nodded slightly. Divine inscriptions suddenly flashed in his eyes. His originally playful and frivolous face suddenly turned solemn and weathered. What are you doing? With Gu Chaoxiai's temperament, she would not be curious about other people's pasts. The path to immortality was vast. Everyone was working hard to cultivate, but they were also shackled by all kinds of restrictions. Pain and humiliation were meaningless in the first place. However, looking at Ling Xiao's expression, Gu Chaoxiai suddenly felt a pang of heartache. She had almost forgotten that this youth was only in his 20s. However, he already had the ability to crush the younger generation in Qing-Tsang. That's right. The path to immortality was vast. If one wanted to grow faster, they could only experience more pain and suffering than others. There was no such thing as power that came out of nowhere. Even if the Sky Demon's talent was eternal, Ling Xiao could only imagine what he had gone through to reach his current level of strength in the past 3 years. Killing, a struggle in the dark without daylight. Only fresh blood was the fastest way for a person to grow. From the moment you left, I swore that the next time I see you, I will never let you stand in front of me again. No matter what I face, no matter how dangerous it is. Because losing you is worse than death. Ling Xiao's tone was calm, as if he was talking about something insignificant. However, the calmer he was, the more shocked and depressed Gu Chaoxiai became. The destined girl has changed her mind. Congratulations to the host for gaining 2,000 luck points and 20,000 villain points. Gu Chaoxiai was stunned for a long time. Her beautiful eyes stared at the calm and gentle face in front of her. At this moment, she was clearly a little confused. If he was not the Sky Demon, perhaps Gu Chaoxiai would not be so cautious. However, according to the rumors, the Sky Demon was the embodiment of darkness and the source of destruction. He had no feelings at all. She was not afraid of dying. She was more afraid of losing something after obtaining it, or rather being deceived. Is that so? In the end, Gu Chaoxiai looked away and pretended to be calm. However, she could not calm down. Even if it was the Sky Demon, if it was only for her, so what if he was kind or slaughtered the entire world? Time will probably prove everything. Ling Xiao smiled. Especially when Gu Chaoxiai's luck points suddenly increased to 80,000, his guess was confirmed. It seemed that this destined girl's secret was indeed related to him. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.